10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, my friends. Hello. How is everyone today? Just when you think this case can't get any crazier, what we're going to do today. I'm sorry I'm late, first of all. I hate being late. It's one of my pet peeves. So I'm always on time. And it is 4:06 p.m. here on the East Coast on Long Island, New York. So I am 6 minutes late and I apologize for that. But I have a very good reason. And the reason is that I just booked an incredible guest for tomorrow on this case, and you are going to love him. I'll talk about him at the end of the stream, but he's going to provide us with some super interesting information that you might find pretty incredible with regard to dog training, dog bites, and things like that. So I'm going to show you one of his videos at the end of the stream, and I'm going to shout out to Team Brittany for sending me one of his videos. He is also a YouTuber. He has a YouTube channel, and we were on the phone right before I was going to go live on this case, and I needed to talk to him and just tell him what, the case was about, because he wasn't familiar with the case, give him a little bit of info, show him a picture of the autopsy photo, and just get an idea of what he thought. He's going to do a whole show with me tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. You don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it. I would love to get Ed on here, but I don't think he wants to talk about this case. And I can understand why. I can understand why a lot of law enforcement channels may not want to talk about this case. For the same reason that a lot of doctors in medical malpractice cases will not testify against other doctors. It's just, you don't want to get involved. I could see that. I don't know. I mean, I could ask him, but word on the street, he may not want to cover this case, and I can understand why. I can totally understand why. So you're stuck with me for now. So for those of you who are saying that I'm late on this case, I just want to point out to you that I did my first live stream on my own YouTube channel at the end of July of 2023. So I wouldn't say that I am so much late on this case, because I have been looking at it a lot behind the scenes. I just wasn't covering it on the air because I was so wrapped up in so many other cases, like the Maya Kowalski case out of Florida and the Long Island serial killer case, which kind of broke over the summer. So look, I only have so much time, and those are the cases I've been focused on for a long time. This case actually came to my attention through, I want to say, either Court TV or Law and Crime, because I like to watch trials, and I saw an amazing motions hearing. And it was a motions hearing on this case where they were discussing evidence that hadn't been turned over, and for 18 months, like critical evidence that under every rule of procedure in criminal court in every state, the defense is entitled to examine and have their own experts examine. And it was just, I thought, And then I started looking into it a little bit more. And one of my viewers pointed out that Aiden was covering it. So right off the top, I'm going to give him credit. I have not watched any of his shows, believe it or not. I have not watched them. But we were talking very briefly in, I think, early October. And then something happened and he was incommunicado, and we have not spoken since then. It was a very brief email exchange. Like, he reached out to me like, hey, somebody said I should reach out to you, that you were interested in covering this case. And that was a long time ago in October. So while I have been actually following this case behind the scenes, I haven't really started covering it until 4 streams ago. This will be the 5th show on the Karen Reed case. And if you're new here, I am Melanie Little. I come to you with 30 years experience as a New York State trial lawyer in state and federal courts. So I got that going for me. I am now a recovering lawyer because I decided to pivot to other things after I handled many, many cases against the Roman Catholic Diocese here on Long Island on behalf of 50 or 60 victims or survivors of clergy SA. That is YouTube lingo for 2 words that you can probably figure out on your own. But if I say crazy stuff or anything YouTube doesn't like in the first 5 minutes of the stream, they will shadow ban the video, demonetize the video, and the word won't get out there about this case. So I also have a lot of friends, family in the Norfolk area. So this also caught my attention because I have so many childhood friends who live in the areas of Natick, Sharon, Wellesley, Norfolk, Foxborough. I spent a lot of my childhood in this area, so I know a lot about it. And it kind of really piqued my interest when I saw that initial motions hearing that I watched. So while I may not be the first person to cover this case, I'm covering it from the legal perspective. And what I like to do when I cover cases from the legal perspective is to look at the actual court documents, because that's what's in the court file, that's what's in the court record. And while many of the stuff that we're going to read about in the court record may not eventually be admissible during trial, we're getting a better sense of what the prosecution thinks that they can prove and what the defense thinks that they can prove. And based on my review of the court file, the defense has had to fight very, very hard to get certain records that they think can prove their case. For example, Verizon and AT&T cell phone records of people who were in the house that they have been denied. So the prosecution can basically get whatever evidence they want, and the defense has to go through the court to make a motion to get the records, to get subpoenas issued, to get this type of information. So the defense, in a sense, has an uphill battle, whereas the prosecution has the state troopers, the Massachusetts State Police working for them, the Canton Police working for them. And so they have a lot more access to evidence than the defense does. See what I'm saying? So when you watch these motions hearings, you have to understand they can't just go out and subpoena things like Jen McCabe's cell phone records and Brian Albert's cell phone records without getting permission from the judge. And so the last stream I did, I think it was yesterday. I don't even know what day it is anymore, you guys. But for posterity, today is January 11th, 111. If you believe in numerology, that's significant. 111, 1111. We looked at the part of the appellate record for the appeal that went up to get Jen McCabe's Google search history and Brian Albert's phone records. Part of it was denied, part of it was granted. That decision came down at the end of November in 2023, because originally the judge in this case, Judge Bev, denied that motion. And she quashed the subpoenas for Brian Albert and Jen McCabe to come in and give evidence at an evidentiary hearing in the Norfolk Superior Court, which I believe is in Dedham, Massachusetts, right? Okay. Amy in Boston. Hi, Amy. Amy, I got your email and I love that. I love your email. I don't even know if I've had a chance to respond to you yet, but I wanted to let you know that I did get it. And you live in Norfolk now, so it's not that far. This is your backyard. And everyone who lives in the area, and correct me if I'm wrong, feels very strongly about this case, either one way or another. And if you believe the Boston Magazine article, which is going to be the subject of today's motion that we're going to go over, the town is divided into 2 camps. Either they believe Karen Read is 100% guilty, or they believe that Karen Read is 100% innocent and that something else happened and that the investigators are trying to cover it up. And that article said things like, kids that are in high school and middle school are losing friends over this. You know, it's almost like a political thing, like, oh, your parents voted for this person, my parents voted for this person, we can't be friends. Like, this is really affecting this town in the deepest ways, at a crazy level that I've never seen before. The only thing I've ever seen that is remotely close to the division that this case has caused was the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, where people were either diehard Johnny Depp stans or Amber Heard stands. Like there was no middle ground there. If anybody who knew about the case, they had a very strong opinion about which side they were on. Oh, hey, Jason, you grew up there too? All right, well, then your boots on the ground as well. You and Amy. Your Kathy Sousa lives 25 minutes away. So you guys know you take this case personally, I would assume. And like Vinny said on Court TV, this is a search for the truth, right? It is. So we've all heard a lot of different stories from the prosecution about what they think really happened and about what they think. Oh, Team Brittany, I'm not even getting into this with you right now. I'm not even getting into that. I'm glad I didn't cover that case because that case was crazy. And it was before I was a YouTuber. So I started watching YouTube and LawTube around that time. And Emily Baker was my go-to on that case. And I thought the whole thing was crazy. Back after this, this family has tons of power in this town and their lives on the line. They're using every bit of power to try to fool people. Lots of people don't want to go against them. This, and you know what this reminds me of? Murdoch, which is a case that I did cover on other channels as a legal analyst before I started my own channel. I've covered it on mine a little bit too, because it was mostly post-trial stuff. The Murdoch family ruled the Low Country of South Carolina for close to a century. And nobody wanted to speak out against the Murdochs. And so the town was totally divided, scared, but they wanted to take the Murdochs down because the Murdochs had done a lot of crazy things. And based on what I'm reading in the post-trial record, I think Alec Murdoch's going to get a new trial. So we didn't cover the first trial together of Alec Murdoch, but we will cover the second one if there is one. How many of you would watch him a second time or watched him the first time? Janine T lives in Norfolk County. Yeah, so there's a lot of local interest in this case. Ava lives 3 minutes away. And so I've reached a whole new category of viewers. When I covered the Maya Kowalski case, a lot of my viewers found my channel a safe place to chat. A lot of my viewers came into this case with either CRPS, which is a chronic pain disorder, or other chronic pain disorders, had been medically gaslit for most of their lives and told that they really didn't have any pain and they were making it up. And if you don't know about the Maya Kowalski case, I don't have time to explain it to you right now, but basically it was about a 10-year-old girl who went into the hospital, a children's hospital, and based on this medical child abuse doctor's opinion, because of a privatized CPS system or DCF system in Florida, making false allegations against this 10-year-old girl's mom, saying the mom had MBP or factitious disorder or Munchausen by proxy. The mom and the dad lost the parental rights of their 10-year-old daughter, and she was in the hospital for 90 days as a ward of the state based on these false allegations. And that event led to the mom taking her own life. And then this was a lawsuit resulting from that. It resulted in a $261 million verdict in Florida. We covered that case at length. And so many of my viewers were Team Maya. They were chronic pain warriors, and they found this a safe place to watch. So that said, my moderators are the best on YouTube. They are the best on YouTube. Some of them are retired law enforcement. We don't tolerate the bullying. We don't tolerate cursey words. We don't tolerate trash talk or foul language or filth. But if you would like to come into the chat, they will welcome you with open arms. Feel free to say hello. Feel free to express your opinion as long as it's clean and it's not a personal attack. And we keep it classy. That's just what we do. So guide your actions accordingly. I know I'm trying outrageous. I'm trying not to lose monetization. Listen, it's not like I can make a lot of money off these videos. You guys have this misconception out there that, you know, I'm covering this and I'm making millions and millions of dollars. No, I pick cases to cover that I'm passionate about because sometimes I'm for the prosecution. Sometimes I'm for the defense. Sometimes I'm for the plaintiff. Sometimes I'm for the defendant. But what I always am for is the Constitution, the rule of law, and procedure. And this is not a neutral channel. I'm not a cupcake. It says it right there because I can't make everyone happy. Okay. I'm also a mother of 5. I have 5 kids. So I've had since I became a mom, you can't make everything happy. You are not a cupcake sign in my bedroom. So I could look at it every day and just remember that I cannot make everyone happy. But I make my members happy. They make me happy. And so I guess we are cupcakes to each other. I don't know. It's a whole thing. It just sort of evolved. But this is not a neutral channel. So if you don't like my opinions, you don't have to watch it. But you also don't have to attack me or my guests or anybody else. Okay. All right. So here we go. This was a motion that was filed last Thursday on behalf of the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth filed these papers. So a lot of people said to me, or one person actually said to me after my last stream where we looked at the appellate record, we read the defendant's reply because that was the last thing to be filed. They said, well, why don't you read the Commonwealth's papers? Well, today we're going to read the Commonwealth's papers. And today we are going to see what their latest version of the facts is and what they think that they can prove at trial. And we are going to discuss together what has been changed, what has been left out. Why is their theory changing? And we're going to evaluate it together because that's what this is. This is a legal analysis channel. This is not a drama channel. And we're going to read the Commonwealth's papers today. Okay? Everybody good with that? All right. Let's just take a look here over here. Thank you, Laura, for your super sticker already. I appreciate you. And Maureen Francis always getting in there so early. I appreciate you too for your super sticker. Team Brittany gifting 5 Attorney Melanie little memberships. Thank you so much, Team Brittany. Huge shout out to you for letting me know about Garrett and sending me his video. And we're going to look at that later, one of his short videos. And then we're going to have a show with him tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. You don't want to miss it. In order to opt into gifts, you need to be participating in the chat. And then when someone gifts memberships, they're randomly distributed by YouTube. I don't have any say in who gets them. But that's how that's done. I think you click something. It's different on an iPhone. YouTube glitches a lot. It glitches a lot, so I really don't know. I can't really tell you. But maybe they'll tell you in the chat how to do it, or somebody can explain to somebody else in the chat how to do it. And if you have questions about the case, there are a lot of people in this chat who know a lot about this case. Intimate knowledge of the facts. And if you have a question about the evidence, you can ask it. And I can't always get to the chat because it moves so quickly. Someone else may answer it for you. But let's stick to the facts and what we know from the court record, okay? And what we've heard them argue at hearings. Thank you, Making Law Simple, for making law simple, and also for your super chat. The state is its own worst enemy in this case. This does not have to be a sensational case, but it is because of how they're handling the evidence. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. I happen to agree with you there. And I think a lot of people are looking at this case the way I looked at it when I had my little clap back at Jennifer Coffindoffer on Court TV. When she said, who is Karen Reed anyway? Why would they even frame her? She's nobody but the girlfriend of a Boston police officer. She's nobody but and I said, Karen Reed is you. Karen Reed is me. Karen Reed is your sister. Karen Reed is my sister. Karen Reed is your daughter, your mother, your wife. Karen Reed could be any one of us. Karen Reed's got the money to fight this, to afford these highly priced, high-powered defense attorneys to fight for her. If she didn't, she would still be in a jail cell 2 years later. If she didn't have $50,000, $80,000 in cash to post bond, that's where she would be. So it's a scary proposition, just like it was a scary proposition when we learned in the Maya case that your parental rights could be stripped within 7 days of your child's admission to a hospital based on false allegations. And then you have to go defend yourself in dependency court and sell your second home to pay for an attorney to defend you there. It is scary, my friends. It is scary. And we should all be afraid. And that is my TED Talk. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Web Weaver, for gifting a membership. I appreciate you as well. All right. We're getting to it. I just need to hide that and bring this on. So Karen Reed did an interview with Boston Magazine. That article was published sometime in September, I believe. And the Commonwealth is making a motion to get the notes of the reporter who authored that article. And as their proof to try to convince the judge of why they should be entitled to get these notes from this reporter, they filed this motion. And this was filed last Thursday, January 4th. So let's take a look at this. And this is the Commonwealth's affidavit in support of their motion for these records. Just want to enlarge this so you can read it along with me, or if you're just listening to me, then you can just listen to my voice. Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. Affidavit in support of Commonwealth's motion for records. My name is Laura McLaughlin, and I'm the Assistant District Attorney assigned to move for the production of records in the above captioned matter. The defendant is charged with murder, manslaughter while operating under the influence, and leaving the scene of personal injury death. It's found by the grand jury. The facts underlying the charges are as follows, set forth in the Commonwealth statement of the case. Okay, so this is the latest statement of the Commonwealth's case as of the date of this filing with the court, which was January 4th, 2024, which is nearly 2 years post-incident. On January 29th, 2022, at approximately 6:04 a.m., the Canton Police Department received a 911 call from a woman reporting a male party, subsequently identified as the victim John O'Keefe, found in the snow outside 34 Fairview Road. I'm going to break to tell you, if you don't know, the victim, John O'Keefe, was a Boston police officer with the Boston PD. Nowhere in the records does it ever mention that in any of the official records. Never mentions it in the police report. None of the records that I've seen ever mention that he is a Boston police officer, and I'm offended by that. Personally, I'm personally offended by that because I 100% back the blue. I have members of my family who are active and retired law enforcement, and I find that to be disrespectful. In fact, when the 911 call was made by Jen McCabe, she did not even say, my friend John O'Keefe, Boston police officer. It's never mentioned. I back the blue. And the victim is a police officer. Keep that in mind. At the time of the 911 call, there was an active blizzard occurring with heavy snow and the temperature in the teens. Officers Saraf and Mulaney, both of the Canton Police Department, were dispatched to the scene along with Canton Fire and EMS. Officer Saraf was the first officer to arrive on scene, where he observed 3 females waving at him from the front yard area of the residence. Officer Saraf's cruiser camera footage captured his arrival to the scene. The footage depicts the weather and visibility conditions during the officer's transit and arrival to the scene shortly after the body of the victim was discovered and the 911 call was placed. In the video, Officer Saraf can be seen utilizing the spotlight attached to the driver's side of his cruiser as he attempts to locate the calling parties in the darkness and blizzard conditions. Okay, questions. It seems to me from my reading of this that they are talking about dash cam footage. I don't know if there's anybody in here from the Canton PD who knows whether they are referring to dash cam footage. There's no reference to body cam footage. Do Canton PD officers wear body cams? And if they do, where's the body cam footage? They're only referring to this video that says his cruiser camera footage. Obviously, we haven't seen that because that is evidence for later during the trial, but I have concerns. Okay. No body cams, says Olivia. Thank you, Olivia. Olivia, I know we keep missing each other. We're like 2 ships in the night. Michelle says also they have no body cams. Angela says, shouldn't they all? Hi, Wendy. Lieutenant Peter is in the chat. Lieutenant Peter is retired. NYPD. Canton PD does not have body cams. Okay. And Olivia says, yes, Melanie, they're referring to dash cam footage inside this Canton PD cruisers. Thank you. Olivia has a vast wealth of knowledge, and she's on Twitter, as Olivia Lambo, and she's got all the documents to back all this stuff up. Follow her on Twitter if you have not done so already. We are trying to connect so that she can come on this show and do this with me, but we're both busy, I guess. All right. So now we know Canton PD does not have body cams, but they do have dash cam footage, and that's what they're referring to here. Back to the document. Looking at the residence of 34 Fairview Road from the street, 3 females were in the left corner of the property in the area of a flagpole and fire hydrant. Officer Saraf observed the victim lying on the ground as 2 of the females were performing CPR on him. The 3 females on scene were identified as the defendant, Karen Reed, Jennifer McCabe, and Kerry Roberts. Officer Saraf also further observed the victim to be cold to the touch and not breathing. He returned to his cruiser to retrieve his AED device. However, at this time, Canton Fire and EMS arrived on scene and took over resuscitative efforts. Paramedics transported Mr. O'Keefe to the Good Samaritan Medical Center in Brockton, where he was subsequently determined to be deceased by Dr. Justin Rice hours later. Lieutenant Paul Gallagher, Detective Sergeant Michael Lank, and Sergeant Sean Good, also of the Canton Police, arrived on scene moments after the 911 call had been received. Following the victim's transport from the scene, they began to search for any evidence in the immediate area around where Mr. O'Keefe's body had been discovered, in the mounds of snow on the front lawn of the residence adjacent to the roadway. They located pieces of a broken cocktail-style glass and multiple patches of red that appeared to be blood in the vicinity of where the body had been located. The Canton officers secured the glass and 6 blood samples from the snow as evidence. I'm going to break here for a minute to say to you this. 6:04, Jen McCabe makes a 911 call to say that there is a man passed out in the snow. Man, not my dear friend, not a Boston police officer, not hysterical, very calmly. There is a man passed out in the snow in front of 34 Fairview. We haven't had a release of the 911 call. That is what the 911 call is alleged to have said. After the 911 call, Officer Saraf pulls up in a cruiser with dash cam footage. 3 women on the lawn, one of whom is screaming bloody murder and hysterical, performing CPR and mouth to mouth, which they don't say. They don't say mouth to mouth here. They just say CPR. Saraf goes back to his cruiser to get his defibrillator. That's AED is a defibrillator, like a portable defibrillator. Paramedics show up. Fire truck maybe shows up. It says Canton Fire. And 3 more officers show up. A lieutenant, a detective sergeant, and another sergeant. And with all of this flurry of activity going on at 6 a.m. on the front lawn of 34 Fairview, the homeowner, Brian Albert, who is at the time a detective sergeant at the Boston Police Department and member of the Fugitive Task Force, and his wife, Nicole, who is the sister of Jen McCabe, who's outside on the front lawn, never come out of their house. They never come out of their house. All this activity is happening. What is also interesting here is that they do not indicate that they borrowed a leaf blower from a neighbor to search for evidence, that the patches of red that appeared to be blood that were located were collected in red Solo cups that they also obtained from a neighbor. These are glaring omissions in this statement of facts that I just want to point out to you. His body was found 12 feet from the curb. Somebody says literally 30 feet from the front door. And if you owned that home, whether you were a police detective or not, and a person who was invited over to your house the night before for your after party after midnight is dead on your front lawn, do you come out? It's logic, my friends, logic, common sense. Why? Why didn't they come out? Did they slept through it? But there was so much noise out there with the leaf blower, at least 2 police cars, fire, EMS, paramedics, hysterical screaming. Dog doesn't bark. Thank you, Snatch. Dog doesn't bark. Chloe, the German Shepherd that they had for 7 or 8 years, the family dog, doesn't bark. Juries do not leave their common sense at the door, and neither do we when we're reading court documents. So, yeah, Debbie, how did they stay inside? Red flag to me. Why would they not come out? Mike Sweeney, originally the prosecution was saying that Karen consumed 8 to 10 drinks in an hour based on her credit card being charged for those drinks. Karen's like 110 pounds. Yeah. Maybe she bought a round. How many people were there at the waterfall? A lot, because we're going to find out. Let's keep reading. CC. If you don't want your DNA found or be seen on video, then you stay inside. Oh, this Boston police officer, Brian Albert, also allegedly had no cameras, or they weren't working, or the Ring doorbell footage. That's missing too. And I'm not accusing him of anything. Everyone should be innocent until proven guilty. And I 100% believe that. But I think a jury's going to have a question. Just saying. So again, Canton PD. By now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 officers on. Oh, no, 5, because Officer Saroff shows up with Officer Mullaney. So they're Canton PD, the first 2. Then we've got the next 3 that show up from Canton PD: Paul Gallagher, Michael Lank, and Sergeant Sean Good. 5 of them are searching the scene where this dead fellow police officer is found. And the only thing that they could find is a broken cocktail glass and 6 blood samples from the snow. That's all they found. It is not going to be until later, when the Massachusetts police gets involved, that all of a sudden more evidence pops up. And I'm not accusing anybody of anything. Common sense wise, what does this say to you? Later that morning, the Massachusetts State Police Detective Unit of the Norfolk District Attorney's Office was notified and responded to the Canton Police Department. Trooper Michael Proctor and Sergeant Yuri Buchanak were among the troopers who responded and began interviewing witnesses. After leaving the Canton Police Department, Trooper Michael Proctor and Sergeant Yuri Buchanak were among the troopers who responded and began interviewing it. I just read that. After leaving the Canton Police Department, they first spoke with Miss McCabe at her home. Question for those of you who are local, because there's so many of you. If this was initially determined to be a homicide, who would get jurisdiction of it? And if it was initially determined to be a motor vehicle accident, who would get jurisdiction of it? Canton PD or Massachusetts State Police? I have questions. Right. At her home, they interview her, Kelly, at her home, at Jen McCabe's home, not at the police department, not videotaped, not even recorded, I don't think, in any way, not even voice recorded. Okay. So the state police take over if they're declared, somebody said. Unattended body goes to the state police. Okay. What time did they take over? So he was pronounced around 7:40, 7:50 a.m. Okay. All right. Okay, cool. So then all suspicious deaths go to Massachusetts State Police. Thank you for that. Every state runs differently, so it's always good to have people in the chat who know. Scott says he was alive on the lawn. I've heard from medical people who tell me that because the body was cold, they could not pronounce him until the body was warmed up. So I'm not sure if he was still alive or not. They said he wasn't breathing. I don't know if they got a pulse. We don't have access to a lot of those records yet. We'll get them at trial, but we don't have them yet. So I'm trying to go by what we have. No recording whatsoever. Norris, I see you tagging me in all your tweets. I can barely keep up, but I thank you. Brian Albert had Google Nest. Where that? Where's that? Yeah, Magnolia Gypsy. I noticed this too. Not even signed by the none of the witness statements are signed. Some of them are dictated. Some of them are not dictated or printed out until a month or two later. Some of the witnesses aren't even interviewed until 18 months after this. Just pointing these things out to you, my friends. Scott McGinnis says it was a gray area on Signs of Life. Okay, so after he was pronounced, that's when they called in the state police. All right, let's keep going because this is like 29 pages. So they go to Jen McCabe's home to interview her. Ms. McCabe indicated that she and some friends were at the Waterfall Bar and Grill during the evening of January 28th. She arrived with her husband Matthew at approximately 9 p.m. following one of their children's high school basketball games early in the evening. That is the first time that I am seeing anything from Jennifer McCabe, why they're calling her Ms. McCabe. In some of these witness statements that they took from her, they call her Jen, which seems to be a little bit friendly. You call somebody Jen, you call somebody Jennifer when you're a police officer, trooper taking a statement. We went over both of her witness statements yesterday at length. Never once did she say anything about going to the waterfall following one of her children's high school basketball games. Never. Anybody else? Now remember, all of these people testified in front of the grand jury. At what point did she all of a sudden mention the high school basketball game? During when she testified in front of the grand jury? Because she did not indicate to Proctor and Buchanan on the day of death that she went to a basketball game. It's not in the statement. We looked at it. I have it. We can pull it up. I've got receipts. Yeah, what does it matter? Exactly. What does it matter if they were at a basketball game? But why add this new detail into this? Why are we adding a new detail into this now? Because it's not in the original statement. And that's what they're literally saying. This was in the statement. Like, this is what she told them right away. It's not. We have it. We looked at it. At approximately 11 p.m., Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed arrived at they don't say Officer O'Keefe, Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed arrived at the waterfall together. Ms. McCabe stated that Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed have been in a dating relationship for approximately 2 years and that Ms. Reed stayed at Mr. O'Keefe's house most nights. Ms. McCabe observed Ms. Reed walk into the bar holding a glass cup from C.F. McCarthy's with a clear liquid inside that she believed was a vodka soda drink. Or, I submit to you, maybe it was seltzer. If this is even really, accurate, I don't even know. I'm starting to believe that I don't even believe anything anymore. Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed had been at C.F. McCarthy's, a bar across the street from the waterfall, prior to coming to the waterfall. Mrs. McCabe observed Mr. O'Keefe to be wearing a baseball hat, jeans, and sneakers. She stated that the defendant and the victim appeared to be in a good mood and did not observe any arguing between the two throughout the course of the evening. Caitlin. Yeah. Yeah. She further described the atmosphere within the bar as friendly with no arguments amongst any of the patrons. This description of the group and the atmosphere within the bar and between the defendant and the victim was consistent with each of the witnesses present that the troopers interviewed throughout the course of their investigation. So every single person that they interviewed said that they were not fighting or arguing, and they seemed to be getting along great. As the bar began to close, everyone within their group was invited back to 34 Fairview Road, the residence of Ms. McCabe's sister, Nicole Albert, and her husband, Brian. She observed Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed to leave the waterfall together. Notice it also does not say Boston police officer Brian. Boston police officer, sergeant, detective Brian. Fugitive task force police officer, Boston PD member Brian. No, it doesn't say that anywhere. As Ms. McCabe was arriving at her vehicle, she received a text message from Mr. O'Keefe asking, "Where to?" at 12:14 a.m. Ms. McCabe replied with the address of 34 Fairview Road. At 12:18 a.m., Mr. O'Keefe called Ms. McCabe to ask more specifically where the house was located on Fairview. While inside the residence following her arrival there, Ms. McCabe observed a black SUV consistent with Ms. Reed's vehicle, a 2021 black Lexus SUV, arrive in front of the residence from her vantage point at the front door of the home. Again, she never said that. She never said that in her first two statements. In fact, her second statement, which was given 4 days after the incident, she said, "I don't know what kind of car it was because I'm not good with cars." But now it's a black SUV. So did she testify in front of the grand jury that all of that now she saw a black SUV? We've talked about this before. Eyewitness testimony is some of the most unreliable testimony out there. Anybody ever watch My Cousin Vinny? I also think I need the receipt on this because now this is getting me very curious. 12:14 a.m. I think she said originally that first 12:14 a.m. message was when she was already at the house, but I want to just pull that up for a second and look at it myself. Her first statement actually says, "John texted Jennifer at approximately 12:14 a.m. asking where to." So it didn't say where she was, but now she's saying she was in her car. Okay. Oh, and she did in her first statement actually did say she observed a large black SUV. This is on 12924. But then her second statement the same day to two different officers says she doesn't know what kind of car it was. So the first statement was taken by Proctor, who they're claiming is like a second family to the Alberts and or the McCabes. And that's why the defense has made a motion to dismiss based on bias of it's very, very Interesting, because the motion to dismiss the indictment is also under seal. We can't see it because it attaches the grand jury transcripts and all kinds of other things that they don't want the public to have access to at this time, because the FBI is currently investigating the investigation. Back to the document. While inside the residence, following her arrival there, Ms. McCabe observed a black SUV consistent with Ms. Reed's vehicle, a 2021 black Lexus SUV, arrive in front of the residence from her vantage point at the front door of the home. Ms. McCabe texted Mr. O'Keefe at 12:31 a.m., stating hello, and again at 12:40 a.m., pull up behind me, referencing her vehicle's parking spot within the driveway to the home, located on the right side of the property if looking at the residence from the street. Ms. McCabe then observed the black SUV move from its initial place where it had stopped on the street near the driveway and proceeded to the left side of the property, where Mr. O'Keefe's body was subsequently discovered later in the morning. At 12:45 a.m., Ms. McCabe texted Mr. O'Keefe again, hello, and then observed the black SUV drive away from the home. Well, the forensics from Karen's phone indicate that she was home by 12:41 a.m. So there's something going on with the timing here. And as you know, because we went over this yesterday, I think it was, with regard to all the forensic evidence that they wanted turned over, many of the text messages and phone calls from Jen McCabe's phone were deleted. And there is battle of the experts going on with the electronics and the forensics and the programs that were used to come to certain conclusions. At approximately 4:53 a.m., Ms. McCabe stated that she received a phone call from Ms. Reed looking for Mr. O'Keefe. The phone call was placed by the victim's juvenile niece at the defendant's direction to Ms. McCabe's cellular phone. The reason for that is because Karen Reed did not have Jen McCabe's contact information. They were not friends. Jen McCabe was friends with John O'Keefe for approximately 8 years because her daughter was friends with Mr. John O'Keefe's niece, who he adopted or became the guardian of, his niece and nephew, when his sister tragically passed away and then her husband passed away 2 months later. And I think at the time of this incident, he had been their guardian for approximately 8 years. That's how they became friends, allegedly. Ms. McCabe answered the call from the victim's niece, spoke to her briefly, and the niece then handed the phone to the defendant. The defendant sounded distraught over the phone and drove over to Ms. McCabe's home. The defendant told Ms. McCabe that she last remembered seeing the victim at the Waterfall Bar. Ms. McCabe then informed the defendant that she observed the defendant and the victim leave the bar together. Ms. McCabe also later informed the defendant that she had seen them in Ms. Reed's vehicle in front of the home on Fairview. New information. She's now saying that she told Karen that she saw her and John inside the vehicle. In front of the home on Fairview. The statements that we read said that she just saw a black SUV pull up and then she didn't know who was in it. She never said that she saw who was in it. But now, the next day, she's telling Karen that she saw Karen and John O'Keefe in the car outside the Albert House at 34 Fairview. The defendant also informed Ms. McCabe that she and the victim had gotten into an argument the last time she had seen him. New information, because that's not in any of her witness statements that we went over the other day, is it? In the first statement of Jen McCabe, let's take a look. Completely made up, people are saying. Coached, people are saying. No, there's nothing in her first statement that she gave to Proctor on the day, on January 29th of 2022, that says, Karen told me they had been in an argument. New information. Alan Jackson and Yannetti are going to have a field day on cross with this if this gets that far. The defendant arrived at Miss McCabe's home around 5:30 a.m. Shortly after the defendant arrived at Miss McCabe's home, Ms. Carrie Roberts arrived there as well, as she had also received a phone call from the defendant that early morning looking for the victim. Ms. McCabe then drove to Ms. Reed's vehicle. Now, Ms. McCabe then drove Ms. Reed's vehicle from her house back to Mr. O'Keefe's house as she was too hysterical, and Ms. Roberts followed along in her own vehicle. Okay. According to this version of events, Carrie Reed is following in her car, and it's still dark out. It's 5:30 in the morning, still dark in January. Carrie Reed is following Jen McCabe driving Karen Reed's vehicle back to the O'Keefe house. I don't know why, because she just came from the O'Keefe house. While driving to Mr. O'Keefe's house, the defendant stated to Miss McCabe, "Could I have hit him? Did I hit him?" Ms. McCabe stated that the defendant also told her about a cracked taillight on her vehicle. Once they arrived at the victim's home, the defendant had Ms. McCabe look at the cracked taillight, which Ms. McCabe described as the passenger side right rear taillight, as cracked and missing pieces. I don't know if the missing pieces thing is new, but what I do know from reading this is that Carrie Roberts, who was following them back to Mr. O'Keefe's house in the dark, never said that while she was following them, she noticed Karen Reed's right rear taillight to be broken and cracked and missing pieces, which she certainly would have. Because at 5:30 in the morning in the dark, the lights would have been on, the brake lights would have gone on. I'm sure they had to stop at least one or two times on the way back. Ms. McCabe and the defendant then entered Ms. Roberts' vehicle to go looking for the victim. The defendant was seated within the back passenger side while Ms. Roberts drove, and Ms. McCabe was seated within the front passenger seat. Ms. McCabe stated that they turned onto Fairview Road from Chapman Street, and at the time, it was just snowing heavily with the wind blowing, creating poor visibility. Ms. McCabe stated that just prior to 34 Fairview, there was a cluster of trees, and immediately the defendant stated that she saw the victim. Okay. We looked at the map the other day. So if this vehicle was traveling from Chapman, I can tell you that 34 Fairview would be on their left-hand side. Correct? And they're going back to 34 Fairview to see if he's still there. So they're looking. Who's driving this car? Hold on one second. Okay. Carrie Roberts is driving. So she's on the left side, closest to the house. Jen McCabe is in the passenger seat. And Karen Reed, who's in the back seat, passenger side, furthest away, sees the body in the front lawn, on the front lawn. This statement initially confused Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts as they were unable to see Mr. O'Keefe's body lying in the snow. Ms. McCabe stated that the defendant screamed to open the door and ran directly over to the body near that cluster of trees and laid on top of him for warmth and began CPR. Ms. McCabe stated that the victim was lying on his back, covered with approximately 6 inches of snow, with his phone later discovered on the ground underneath him after being removed by emergency medical personnel. The defendant yelled at Ms. McCabe twice to Google, "How long do you have to be left outside to die from hypothermia?" or something to that effect. So I'm going to break from reading this for a second just to submit to you, as I always do. Karen Reed is hysterical. Her boyfriend didn't come home the night before, which is something she said he would not do because of the children. They pull up. She sees his body on the lawn. She is hysterical. And during that time, using your common sense, do you think that she's going to scream twice to the woman sitting in the front seat of the car? Please Google how long to die from hypothermia or something to that effect. Anyone? You think in the midst of the grief and the shock and the trauma that she's experiencing by seeing her potentially dead boyfriend of 2 years on the front lawn of this house where she dropped him off the night before, that she's going to be screaming out for her to Google how long do you have to be left outside to die from hypothermia? Does that strain credulity for you? Because it does for me. On January 29th, the troopers interviewed Mr. Matthew McCabe separately from his wife. They're putting that in there now. I'm breaking from the document for a second because they were, the defense was making a big deal about them interviewing people in groups to take witness statements. And they made sure to put it in here now that they interviewed him separately from his wife. Matthew McCabe is the husband of Jen McCabe. Mr. McCabe indicated that he's known Mr. O'Keefe for approximately 8 years and had met Ms. Reed a handful of times. He stated that he was at the Waterfall Bar on Saturday night and observed the victim and the defendant enter together. He observed the victim to be wearing a baseball hat with a curved visor and Ms. Reed to be drinking a clear liquid drink, possibly vodka. Possibly vodka. Mr. McCabe stated that he left the bar last from his group and was heading to his in-laws' home at 34 Fairview Road. He entered his vehicle, and his wife, Jennifer, was on the phone with the victim, telling him to go to 34 Fairview. While at the Fairview residence, he observed a large, dark SUV pull up in front of the house on the street. He'd been looking out the open front door through the glass storm door and described the SUV's positioning as initially parked in front of the house. Mr. McCabe looked out the window some minutes later and observed the same vehicle had moved toward the left side of the property. Minutes following that, he observed the same vehicle driving off down Fairview, heading in the same direction it had been facing while parked. Well, initially, I'm breaking from the document for a minute. Didn't he say that he saw some wavy tire patterns in the road to indicate a 3-point turn? Now he's saying something different. KCO5. Oh, and if that front door was open, someone in that house, wide open, someone in that house would have heard Karen hit John if that's what actually happened. We looked at the Zillow listing. We know that the front door was solid and there was a double paned storm door, windows on top and bottom, solid glass, didn't have any sort of, whatever you call those things, grates in the windows. Solid glass, top and bottom. He said the vehicle drove off, John says, in the same direction it was facing. Later, he claimed to see V-shaped tracks in the road. Suzanne says initial statement was a 3-point turn. Marks on the road. Yep. Let me just take a look. Let's take a look because, we like to be accurate. So I know I have it here, so I'm just going to pull it up. Matt McCabe's interview with Trooper Proctor was taken on January 29th, but was not typed up until April 7th. Okay. I'm going to pull this up because I want you to see it too, because, if we're going to look at the receipts, let's look at the receipts, right? He must have testified differently to the grand jury, I imagine. So hang on one second. Let's get it up here. Interesting. It always makes me sus when people's statements keep changing, because the most accurate statements are the one given most close in time to the event, right? You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. So let's look at his original statement. We looked at it the other day, but we're here now, so let's look at it again. Matt McCabe's statement to Trooper Proctor on January 29th of 2022 at his house. Same time they interviewed his wife, Jen McCabe, but it's not typed up until April 7th of 2022. And apparently I don't think there's any notes either. Here it is at page 2, paragraph 3. While at 34 Fairview Road, Matthew stated he observed a big dark SUV parked to the right of the house. Matthew stated he was making these observations from the front door. Matthew stated he looked out the front window and observed the same big dark SUV had moved to the other side of the property, approximately 15 to 20 feet. It's now been clarified to say storm door. So was it the front storm door or was it the front window? Matthew was not sure how long the vehicle was outside for, but did not hear any loud noises or screaming from inside. Matthew stated both times he observed the vehicle on the street, the headlights were facing toward Chapman Street. Matthew stated he observed tire tracks in the snow on the street in front of the house. Matthew described the pattern as a wave or V shape. Matthew stated the tire tracks went from the curb in front of 34 Fairview towards the neighbor across the street and then back towards the curb. The pattern of the tracks were consistent with making a 3-point turn. Matthew stated he did not see these tracks prior to the big black SUV arriving outside of the home. Thoughts, concerns? Thoughts, concerns? Was his grand jury testimony completely different to what he said on January 29th of 2022 to his may or may not be friend, Michael Proctor? who may or may not be a second family, like a second family to his family. I don't know. What say you, my friends? What say you? Maureen loves this channel and this community. Why, thank you. I love it. We love it too. KCO5, they must have blinked when Karen hit John since they seem to have watched her car do everything but hit John. Yeah, right? Broken Baker, and why does both not see Nagel in his car? He's right outside the house. Right. Nobody mentions him pulling up. Betty's like, boy, he saw a lot from the door. Adam Fox, Alpha Fox Adam. Yeah, I see a lot of comments like in my comments. And I don't know if you're like being sarcastic or if you're like really just trying to troll. So I'm not really sure about you yet. If anybody wants to vouch for this guy, insert yourself into a crime scene and volunteer info to the police, said no attorney ever, laughing your ass off. Well, so I had a question for you when you put this comment in the comments, and I said, are you saying that Brian Albert considered himself to be a suspect at that time, and that he called his attorney, and that his attorney said, don't go out there? I mean, is that what you're suggesting? Is that what you're suggesting? Because I'm having some issues with your comments. I'll wait while you respond to that, because I'm really just wondering. Clara says it's hard to tell because the trolls are pretty ignorant. Yeah, I'm sure you get it too. Clara, on your channel, I'm sure you get it too. So, what say you, Adam? What say you? I mean, we're waiting for it. Are you saying that Brian Albert called his attorney from inside the house and that I'm an idiot for suggesting that it's crazy that he didn't go outside into the front yard because right away we all knew that he was a suspect and he considered himself to be a suspect? I'm just having a little issue with figuring out what your comments mean. And if you'd like to explain yourself, I'd love to hear it. But I don't think you're gonna Tracy's like, we're waiting. We're waiting. K-Pick as a fugitive task force officer, Adam. Sounds like a man in his mom's basement. Wait, are you a K-Pick? Are you a fugitive task officer? That's interesting. Oh, Adam, do you not want to back up your comments with some facts, or are you just being sarcastic? I can't tell. I genuinely can't tell because I've seen a lot of your comments on there, and I asked you that in the comments if you thought that he was a suspect, and that I'm an idiot as an attorney for suggesting that he should have gone out onto his front yard. Well, if he had nothing to hide, yeah, he should have, because there's a dead police officer on your front yard, and you're a police officer. Not just a police officer, a sergeant detective, and also on the fugitive task force. You don't go outside? Oh, Scott says troll. Okay. Oh, swiper, keep swiping. StreamYard, I have beef with you. I have beef with you for letting me swipe myself out of the stream. Okay, Alpha Fox Adam, you're a minute and a half behind, but again, I don't know. What, you don't think that a police officer should go out and talk to the police? Is that what you're saying? I don't know. Ed says, I think Adam's afraid of you, Melanie. It happens. Look, I guess. I don't know. People are intimidated by women who might have a brain. I don't know. Is that it? Is this a Reddit troll? I'm definitely afraid. We learned about these Reddit guys on the Maya case when the defense firm actually pulled a legal argument straight out of Reddit. If you guys don't know about this claim, Reddit was going crazy with some information that one of the jurors on the case who wrote a note to the court asking questions, because in Florida, the jury can ask questions of the witnesses, which is crazy in my experience. But this juror wrote a note, and in the note, somebody on Reddit said, look at these S's. They're like lightning bolts. That means that juror number 1 thinks that this witness, that whose name he's writing out, Sally Smith, he must be a Nazi because those look exactly like Nazi symbols. The defense firm attorneys took that Reddit thread and used that exact legal argument in their papers to try and say the juror was biased and get the case thrown out and the $261 million verdict thrown out. So we know what goes on Reddit. And the fact that an attorney would pull his argument right off there is kind of whack. So I did a little Google Slides presentation with all of the other things that those S's could be resembling, like the rock band Kiss, the Gatorade logo. They have that lightning bolt too. The rock band Slayer. Maybe he was a fan of Kiss. Maybe it was like, it was so ridiculous. It's almost as bad as those attorneys who let ChatGPT write their briefs in federal court and got called out by the judge and sanctioned. We know they were awake, says Olivia, because Nicole Albert answered 2 phone calls from Jen McCabe at 6:08 a.m. Yeah. She may have called them from the car. K-Pick, imagine making a comment saying a cop's dead on the front lawn of a cop's house and he shouldn't have went outside to talk to police because he would make himself a suspect. Adam telling mom to turn off whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll let Adam stay for now, but I'm just trying to figure out what he's saying. Broken Baker, Reddit, the only place better for legal analysis than X, where the people are 10% less intelligent than wet cardboard. Hope always, I have not seen any other LawTube lawyer covering this case. People are covering it. I just not on the LawTube side. I don't know why nobody wants to touch it, but I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Oh, I didn't see all of his responses. I can't. The chat's moving too quickly. There's 1,300 people in here right now. So if you would all do me a favor while I'm looking for this and just put your DNA on the like button. It doesn't cost you anything. And it helps YouTube push the stream out so a lot more people will know about this and this case and these facts. Kay Sheldon, this trial has not started yet. It's going to start on March 12th. These are all pre-trial motions happening here. Adam, where are you? I answered above and in the comments. Okay. I mean, I'm just genuinely curious. Talk to the police. LOL. Sure. Okay. There's really no explanation here. So we're just going to keep moving because I really don't have too much more time to spend on this, but yeah, I do. Caitlin, I do. Caitlin says Melanie calls her trolls to the front of the class. Love it. You know what I do sometimes too? If people like attack me personally in the comments, I pin it to the top. I pin it to the top of the video. So always go to the video to see what's pinned to the top. And there's been some crazy, crazy comments that people will put at the top. And I pin them to the top. I'm not going to delete them. I'm going to pin them because I'm going to let everyone know what a moron you are for coming to my channel and putting some ridiculous, like you actually took the time to stop and say something nasty to me instead of just turning the channel. It's insane. It's literally insane. I don't really care about this enough to even go back through the comments. So whatever. Let's just go back to the papers, shall we? All right. So no mention of Matt McCabe's original statement where he says that he saw these 3-point turn marks on the road because now, as you know, the prosecution's theory has changed and they're not going to go with the 3-point turn theory where she backed into him during a 3-point turn. Now it's going to be a different theory. So now Matt McCabe says, or testified in front of the grand jury, minutes following that, he observed the same vehicle driving down Fairview heading in the same direction. Troopers also interviewed the homeowners of 34 Fairview Road, Brian and Nicole Albert. Both confirmed that they had been at the Waterfall Bar the previous evening with family and friends, and had left around closing and returned to their home. Throughout the evening, they both indicated that the victim and the defendant, neither of whom they knew particularly well, entered the bar and joined their group. They indicated that several people from the group had been invited back to their home following the bar, and several arrived, staying for approximately 1 hour. Both indicated in their sworn testimony before the grand jury in this matter that their nephew, Colin Albert, while present at the home upon their arrival, had left their home well before any of the guests' arrival from the waterfall. Several other witnesses called before the grand jury similarly confirmed this. Okay, I have questions. The grand jury was convened and heard from, I think, approximately, Olivia, if you're here, 47 witnesses, right? So in order to indict someone for a crime, in this case, second-degree murder, you need a grand jury to hand you a true bill. Somebody in New York once said, a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich. So I forget who that was. If anybody knows who said that a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich, please let me know, because I would like to attribute that quote to that person. I'll tell you a little something about grand juries. The grand jury process is secret. The grand jury process only involves the prosecution. The defense is not allowed in. They don't even really know what's going on. So there is no defense attorney in the room during the presentation of the prosecution. It's a one-sided case. It is only the prosecution. They call in witnesses. In this case, I think they called in something like 45 or 47 witnesses. Was it Lenny Briscoe? He's from Law and Order, right? Huge fan. Yeah, please keep it respectful and classy. Thank you. Dennis, who also is retired law enforcement. My guys protect me. I have bouncers in my chat, if you will. Grand jury proceedings are secret. They are one-sided. Only the prosecution presents a case. They called, in this case, a lot of witnesses. The grand jury is allowed to ask questions. Grand jury proceedings are secret. The transcripts are not available to the public. And people who serve on a grand jury, if you've ever served on a grand jury, you're sworn to secrecy. So everything that the grand jury heard was not contributed to by the defendant or by the defense or her version of events. It's just based on the witnesses that testified and the troopers that testified, the police officers, the medical examiner testified. A lot of people testified. Why are they asking during the grand jury proceedings? Why do they make a big deal about asking whether Colin Albert was in the house? Thank you. It was Saul Walkler. Thank you, Suzanne. Saul Walkler, who was a New York, he was the chief judge of the New York Court of Appeals, said a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich. Let's always give him credit. May he rest in peace. I think he's, now I don't know. Is he still alive? I don't know. I don't think so. Bonfire of the Vanities author Tom Wolfe quotes New York State Chief Judge Saul Walkler, who said a grand jury would indict a ham sandwich if that's what you wanted. Yeah. So we got to take all this kind of with a grain of salt. But my question here is, why are they asking questions during the grand jury proceedings about Colin Albert? And why is that such a big deal in these motion papers that were just served January 4th of 2024? We're coming back on January 18th because there's going to be a hearing. But I ask you, why was that such a big deal during the grand jury proceedings? Because a witness statement was never taken from him. Colin Albert is, at the time, was what, 18 years old? I think. People have said that he was a hothead, maybe. There have been some videos floating around on Twitter and other places that he had some right hand damage, and some videos that were posted to social after this incident. That they may have had some beef because Colin Albert was neighbors with Officer John O'Keefe. Colin Albert's father, Chris Albert, is on the like town board or something. I'm not sure what you guys call that in Canton. He's a selectman, I think. So he's a politician. His dad. Both indicated in their sworn testimony before the grand jury in this matter that their nephew Colin Albert, while was present at the house upon their arrival, had left their home well before any of the guests' arrival from the waterfall. Wicked psyched. You wicked psyched. It's wicked good lobster. One of my favorite restaurants in, I don't know if it's in Concord. I think it's in Concord, New Hampshire. Has a big sign outside that says wicked good lobster. LOBSTAH. Wicked psyched. Colin's hand damage was 2 weeks after the incident. Kevin C says bruised knuckles. Alpha Fox Adam is coming in now. Colin Albert was in the house, but left prior to their arrival and was Snapchatting shortly after. Oh, I'd love to see those Snapchats. Because Snapchat is what convicted Alex Murdaugh. Alex Murdaugh lied about being at the kennels when his wife Mags and his son Pawpaw were murdered by him, as decided by a jury. And then a Snapchat video surfaced showing him at the kennels, and that's what convicted him. So I would love to see those Snapchats. How would the grand jury even know about Colin? Well, I guess somebody asked, but it wasn't in any of the witness statements that we read together. Who was in the house that night? Alpha Fox Adams, since you seem to know, how did he leave? Did he leave in his Ford Edge? Because we went over that the other night when he was pulled over by campus police driving a Ford Edge registered to his mom. Coincidentally, the same car that Lucky, the plow driver, who's got no skin in this game, the snowplow driver, saw parked exactly where John O'Keefe's body was found, somewhere between 3 and 4 a.m., I believe, which caused him to not go down and plow the road, Fairview, at that time. So how did he leave? Scott McGinnis says Colin was in the house at the same time as John O'Keefe. That's why they're so desperate to hide. Well, did anybody get a hold of Colin Albert's phone? Because the data on his phone, his location, would tell a story, I submit to you, but I'm pretty sure nobody ever did that because everyone said he had already left. It's just food for thought. There's a lot of scenarios that could have happened here. A lot of scenarios that don't involve Karen Reed intentionally murdering John O'Keefe with her car. And it says right here, several other witnesses called before the grand jury similarly confirmed this, that Colin Albert was not present. Why was that such a big topic of conversation during this indictment? Did they know that Karen Reed's attorneys were going to use this theory of a third-party culprit, and they wanted to get ahead of it? Questions. Neither Brian and Nicole were aware that the defendant and victim, Karen and John, had planned on coming over, although they would have had no issue if they had been aware. Neither heard nor saw anything outside their home over the course of the morning until Miss McCabe awaked them. How did she awake them? By phone call or by going into their bedroom? It doesn't say. Leaving that open, I guess, till some other time. Troopers also interviewed Mr. Ryan Nagel. Mr. Nagel's sister, Julie, had been at 34 Fairview the evening of January 28th, visiting with the Albert's son for his birthday. It's Brian Albert Jr. And he's not a child. He's an adult. I think somebody said he was class of 2017, so that would make him maybe turning 21 or 22, depending on his birthday. Mr. Nagel stated that he had been contacted by his sister asking for a ride home. His friend drove with Mr. Nagel in the front passenger seat and his girlfriend in the rear cab of his friend's Ford F-150 pickup truck to Fairview. As the truck was driving down Cedar Crest Road, he observed a set of headlights of a mid-sized black SUV coming from the opposite direction on Cedar Crest, and the truck he was traveling in yielded to the SUV, making a right turn onto Fairview, and then followed behind it after executing his left turn onto Fairview. Mr. Nagel stated that the truck stopped directly in front of the driveway to the home and remembered the black SUV stopping along the right-hand curb toward the left side of the property. He remained within the truck while his sister exited the home and asked them to come inside. He declined the invitation, and his sister eventually decided to stay at the home and make other transportation arrangements. Okay. We went over his statement the other day, and didn't he say, my sister came out and said she was going to sleep over? Not that she was going to make other arrangements to get home. She was going to sleep over. Anybody remember that? Also, according to Ryan Nagel, who's got no skin in this game, he's pulling up to the house at the same time as Karen and John. Directly behind them. He yields to them to make their turn. Then he makes his turn, and they pull up to the house at the same time. Why is it that every single witness only saw Karen's SUV and nobody mentions a second car? This is a different story, my friends. Ryan Nagel said his sister was going to sleep over, not that she was going to find another way home, because what eventually happened is Jen McCabe, I think, drove her home and her husband. So again, I got questions. And the reason that this is a different version is because the defense has been provided with the transcript of the grand jury testimony. Everything has to fit. Everything has to fit. Everyone mentions the big black SUV, but nobody mentions the big Ford F-150 pickup truck right behind it. Nope, not important. Nothing to see here, folks. As his sister returned to the house, Mr. Nagel observed the black SUV pull up an approximately 1 to 1.5 car lengths to the far left edge of the home's property, where the flagpole was located, along with some bushes. He stated that the SUV's driver did not appear to place the vehicle in park at any point he observed it, as the rear brake lights were illuminated throughout his observations, to include the third top center light. Mr. Nagel reported hearing no noises coming from the interior of the SUV. Mr. Nagel indicated that as his friend pulled away from the side of the road when they were leaving, they drove past the black SUV. He observed the interior light on within the vehicle and a Caucasian female operator seated inside the vehicle, holding the steering wheel at 10 and 2, staring straight ahead of her. Okay, this is all they're going to say about Ryan Nagel. And since we looked at his statement the other day, I don't need to pull it up for you because I'm sure that you remember what was left out of this statement of facts. And that is, Ryan Nagel said she was in the car alone. She was in the car alone. Notice how they left that out here? Just coincidentally left it out. She was in it alone. He saw the brake lights illuminated throughout his observations. Did they ask him if there was a broken taillight? You can bet that if he said a taillight was broken, they would have put it in his statement if he said that. But if they didn't ask him during his grand jury testimony, did you notice a broken taillight? He wouldn't have answered it because they didn't ask him the question. They didn't ask him if she was alone in the car. H-bag. Melanie, can the defense show the jury all the changes during trial and show them original Dr. Rees-Knocht? Yeah, and it's fodder for cross-examination. Grand jury testimony is sworn testimony. That is sworn to under penalties of perjury, my friends. Penalties of perjury. You can go to jail for perjury, especially in a murder case like this, for giving false testimony. And I'm not saying that Ryan Nagel is lying about anything. He's sitting in the passenger seat of this Ford F-150. They pull up right next to Karen's car to get by her. He's got a direct view into her window. It's not a very wide street. You've seen it. He said she was alone in the car. They left that out of this statement of facts. But he can certainly be asked that at trial. They probably didn't ask him that in front of the grand jury. Was she alone in the car? I mean, it was very calculated what they asked him and what got into the record. This is going to be a mishigas, people. A mishigas of a trial, and I am here for it. Unless, by some very slim margin, they decide to dismiss this indictment based on whatever it is that the FBI is investigating and has found, and all of the things that are under seal that we can't have access to. We're just looking at what we can have access to at this point. Troopers also later interviewed Mr. Nagel's sister, Miss Juliana Nagel, as well as her friend, Miss Sarah Levinson. People have pointed this out to me. I think Sarah Levinson's name is spelled with an H at the end, and they misspelled it with an A. Both of whom had been present at the home on Fairview on January 28th or 29th, 28th to the 29th, because it was after midnight, and both of whom had been given a ride home by the McCabe's. Both indicated that they had been at the home on Fairview for Brian Albert Jr.'s birthday on that evening. Both provided a list of other individuals there. Okay, so that's interesting. So they didn't know about Colin Albert, I guess, for a while, because it was a while before they even got Juliana Nagel's statement. That may have been even after. They may even have gotten her statement after the grand jury. She may have never been called to the grand jury. Somebody had also indicated that it was Sarah, or there was another girl who I think they're not mentioning here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that she was a nurse. Ruby Chase says Sarah's also a nurse who should have helped to save John. If she knew what was going on, it is very, very possible that if something was going on, that the kids, I call them kids because they're 21, 22, could have been in a different room playing beer pong while something else happened in another room. So I don't even know. I can't even fault her for not trying to save any life if anything happened inside that house, which innocent until proven guilty. And, they're working off a theory of another. Oh, Siri wants to talk to me. I said theory. Third-party culprit theory. Yeah, I don't think she knew what was going on either, if, as we're saying, this is what happened. And there's another girl who's not even mentioned here at all. And I tell me what her name. I think her name is Emily. I think her name is Emily, who was also there, but she's never mentioned in this. Did she have something to say different? Witness protection. Wasn't there another girl? Another friend of Brian Jr.? Emily. Yep. Her name's Emily. Where's her statement? Yours went on too, KL Burke, huh? I know, that's so funny. Theory. I mean, what up? Sounds like there are a bunch of drunk people in the house. Fight broke. I mean, I don't know. So they were both given a ride home by the McCabe's, Juliana and Sarah. Both indicated that the Alberts, Brian, and Nicole arrived later in the evening from the waterfall and listed those in the group to include the Alberts, the McCabe's, and Mr. Higgins. Both indicated that no one else entered the home while they were there and that they got a ride home from the McCabe's. Miss Levinson recalled Mrs. McCabe saying that someone else was coming. However, that person never arrived. Okay. When she says those listed in the group to include the Alberts, she also including Colin Albert in there. Notice how that's very specific and just says the Alberts. No direct mention of Colin, right? Really, in what world would Ms. McCabe say, some other people are coming? Like, why would she announce that to a group of 22-year-olds? Why would she say, oh yeah, someone else is coming over? I don't, strains my credulity. I don't know if she said that or if they said she said that, or I don't even know where to go with that. Juliana Nagel stated that she had called her brother Ryan for a ride home at approximately midnight. While waiting for him to arrive, she was looking out the kitchen window and observed an SUV stop by the mailbox in front of the SUV facing Chapman Street. She stated that she further observed the SUV travel along the front of the house and stop between the mailbox and the flagpole where it came to a stop. She observed the SUV further pull up closer to the flagpole and stop again. She went outside to speak with her brother and noticed that it was lightly snowing at this time. Lightly snowing. After her brother declined, she offered to come inside. After her brother declined her offer to come inside, and she indicated to him that she would arrange an alternative way home. That's not what she said, guys. Didn't she say she was going to sleep over? I mean, am I in the twilight zone? Now she's saying she told her brother she would arrange an alternative way home. She went back inside the home with the SUV still parked in the aforementioned position. Ms. Nagel stated that she left the residence in the McCabe's vehicle sometime between 1:30 and 2 a.m. With Mr. McCabe driving, Miss McCabe in the front passenger seat, her behind the driver in the back seat, and Miss Levinson seated next to her behind Miss McCabe. This is important because we're not hearing this until now. Again, new information. Mr. McCabe reversed out of the driveway, and as they traveled past the house, Ms. Nagel indicated that she thought she saw something she described as a dark object in the snow by the flagpole, but could not determine what it was. I have questions. Did Juliana Nagel testify in front of the grand jury under penalties of perjury, or are we taking this from her statement that she didn't sign, that Trooper Proctor dictated, didn't record, and typed up? This is the first time I'm hearing that Mr. McCabe reversed out of the driveway. Did anybody else ever hear that before? I know you guys have been following this case really closely. And if he did reverse out of the driveway and they traveled past the flagpole, we've looked at pictures of the house. Jen McCabe is sitting in the passenger seat. She didn't see anything on the lawn. Nobody else saw anything on the lawn. Nobody else saw a body on the lawn. But now, all of a sudden, so many months later, when they finally interview Julie Nagel, Trooper Proctor says that Julie Nagel says she saw something, but could not determine what it was. His lights would scan the whole yard. They would have driven right by the body, right? Yes, they were parked in the driveway and went past the flagpole, says Care Bear. But this is the first time I'm seeing Mr. McCabe reversed out of the driveway as they travel past the house. Has anybody heard that before? Suzanne, yes, I heard that before. The dark object was inserted after the initial statements. Yep. Charlene, the McCabe's offered to drive them home as they could go by John's house to see if anything was going on there. I have questions, says, well, he said, she said that. Joe Biffle, no video, no notes, no effort to develop other suspects, no house, no dog, no search, goes on and on. Scott, they're literally making all this up from scratch by intermixing newly revealed grand jury testimony. But right, because they hadn't turned over the transcripts yet. They just turned those over recently, right? Olivia, if you're here, when did the defense finally get a hold of the grand jury transcripts? That makes sense. That makes sense. His body was not by the flagpole. That's on the other side of the yard. Is that right? Kirk, 71, hypothesizes there's a lot more going on in this case than we all know. John had information and they needed to know if he had pieced it together. They are covering for someone high up. Jennifer Bell and Jeremy Cabes drinking and driving in the snow. Thanks, Jody, for appreciating my stream. And I'm assuming with that 617 area code, you are an OG, Massachusetts OG. It was the flagpole is by the fire hydrant. I thought so when we looked at the pictures of the car. I thought so. And that's why Lucky said, I know there's a fire hydrant there, so I'm always looking there so I don't hit the fire. I don't hit the fire hydrant with my plow. Yeah. I find so far, out of all the eyewitness testimony, Lucky's to be the most credible. Although that wasn't taken until how long after this incident? After the defense was told there were no records and the GPS didn't work in any of those trucks. Later that day of January 29th, troopers Matthew Dunn and David DeCicco, or DeCicco, depending on what part of Italy you're from, interviewed Ms. Carrie Roberts. Ms. Roberts stated to them that approximately 5 a.m. she received a call from the defendant, Karen Reed, stating that John did not come home. It was snowing and she was worried. The defendant further stated to Ms. Roberts, John's dead. Carrie, I wonder if he's dead. It's snowing. He got hit by a plow. That's what the statement says. I want to know if she testified in front of the grand jury. Ms. Roberts got dressed and left in her vehicle, eventually meeting the defendant at Ms. McCabe's home, where she observed the defendant to be hysterical. Ms. Roberts stated that she believed the defendant was still intoxicated in the morning and had told her she did not remember last night. She's the first one to say, and notice how they put in there, still intoxicated in the morning, when everyone who was at the Waterfall Bar, which is the last place Karen was before she drove up to the front of 34 Fairview, everyone said she wasn't drunk. So now they're saying that Carrie said she was still intoxicated in the morning and told her she didn't remember last night. Ms. Roberts reported that the defendant, as stating to her, quote, I was so drunk, I don't even remember going to your sister's last night. Referring to Ms. McCabe's sister, the homeowner of 34 Fairview Road. So Carrie Roberts is saying she overheard Karen say that to Jen McCabe. It's like double hearsay, triple hearsay. I'm not even sure. But remember, the prosecution gets to decide which witnesses they call in front of a grand jury. She may not have been called. This may just be taking stuff out of her statement that she didn't sign. Ms. Roberts followed the defendant's black Lexus SUV back to Mr. O'Keefe's house. Notice, no mention of a broken taillight as she's following the SUV back to Mr. O'Keefe's house. They went inside the home for a period of time, looking for him to no avail and checking on the victim's niece. While at the victim's home, Ms. Roberts stated that the defendant had told her and Ms. McCabe about a cracked rear passenger taillight and showed the both of them that area of her vehicle. Okay, I'll also tell you that there's Ring camera footage from John O'Keefe's house that show that when Karen left the house at something like 5 a.m. to go to Jen McCabe's, she backs into John O'Keefe's car. There's Ring doorbell camera footage that shows it. You can look it up. I don't have it pulled for you guys to watch, but may have been when she cracked her taillight. And that would track time-wise if after she goes to Jen McCabe's and now they're all going back to John O'Keefe's house again. Some people have hypothesized as a stalling tactic before getting back to 34 Fairview in case some things needed to be set up or taken care of. Because it makes no sense. It defies logic. It strains credulity. Why would she go to Jen McCabe's house in her car, frantic looking for John for John O'Keefe, her boyfriend, having just come from his home where he was not. Why would they then go back to his house to look for him when she just make it make sense? Somebody make it make sense. Why wouldn't they just go from Jen McCabe's house to 34 Fairview? Make it make sense. Who is driving this train? Who is steering? Who's steering? Joe Biffle says the assistant police chief across the street has videos. That's right. There was an assistant police chief who lives directly across the street from 34 Fairview. He claims his video showed nothing. Nobody ever subpoenaed it. Nobody ever got a copy of it. The direction of his camera faces exactly where that body would have been found. Nobody ever looked for it. And he was the assistant police chief of Canton PD, by the way, right? Yes, Olivia Nile, because there was a 2:27 a.m. Google search from Jen McCabe, who was home by that time, according to her own account, that she left there. Who can even keep track of her timing now? But between 12:30 to 1 o'clock, 2:27 a.m., she is Googling Haas long to die in the cold because she misspelled it. I wonder what the answer to that Google search was. Has anybody tried Googling that? If anybody ever looked at my Google search history, I would be dead because I'm researching these cases all the time. I have insane Google searches. Now we all know. Debbie Pompeo, I wonder if the FBI got the ring footage from across the street. That would be interesting to know. Deanna Fazio, and her Apple data shows she never went to bed. Nobody tracks you better than Apple. Your steps, your location, your breathing, your heartbeat. So they go back to Jen McCabe's house, to the O'Keefe house. They went inside the home for a period of time looking for him to no avail and checking on the victim's niece. While at the victim's home, Ms. Roberts stated that the defendant had told her, Ms. McCabe, about a cracked rear passenger taillight and showed the both of them that area of her vehicle. Notice, they do not give Carrie Roberts' description of the broken taillight. Did they ask her if there were pieces missing from it? Did she say something that they didn't write down, like it looked a little bit cracked to me? They don't say. You don't say. So Ms. Roberts then drove her vehicle with Ms. McCabe in the front passenger seat and the defendant in the rear passenger's side to 34 Fairview Road. She and Ms. McCabe were scanning the sides of the roadway along the drive looking for the victim, while the defendant periodically screamed and texted on her phone as they drove. Ms. Roberts described the weather as whiteout conditions as they were driving around. Just checking something. Ms. Roberts followed the defendant's black Lexus SUV back to Mr. O'Keefe's house. They then went inside the home. And then they leave in Carrie's vehicle. So they left Karen's car at O'Keefe's house. So Karen's car was at O'Keefe's house when they found the body, correct? Am I correct on that? Thanks, Scott. Scott's one of my amazing moderators. Nasty comments will be deleted, as will personal attacks, and timeouts are next. Oh, he's actually giving you a warning today. So guide your actions accordingly. Thank you, Jessica, for your super sticker. Adam Fox crawled back into his safe space. Jacqueline Bolden, thank you for your super sticker. I appreciate you. Tara Reina, thank you for your super sticker from Canada. Adam McCabe awaked them, yet he never went. Oh, McCabe awaked them, yet they never went outside. No, because I think her story is she came into my bedroom and woke me up, and by the time I got downstairs, everyone was gone. It was all gone. Nobody was left, said, I think, Julie Albert. Scott Cleary, thank you for your super sticker. I appreciate that. Ivan Victor became a new YouTube member. Yay, Ivan. Welcome. Paige, thanks for your super sticker. Wicked Psyched, thanks for your super chat. Thank you for going through these reports with us. The story and things reported have changed so many times since this case started. I know that's why it is so confusing for so many of us. This is the most recent version. So this was filed with the court on January 4th, 2024. I'm glad you're wicked psyched about it. Jessica, thanks for your very generous super chat. If Karen is found not guilty, can anyone else bring forward charges against these schmucks, or can only the DA's office charge someone with murder? Because we know the DA's office will never charge them or finding the truth. I submit to you that there could be a parallel investigation going on right now, looking for other evidence. I mean, the DA's office is supposed to turn over all exculpatory evidence. It's called Brady material to the defense. And this has taken a lot of time. They have not turned it all over. There could be a parallel investigation going on right now. And maybe, I can't say this with 100% certainty, we know that the Albert home was sold. This jet home that had been in the family for generations. The house was sold. Did the new homeowners agree to let the defense team into their basement to come in with some forensics to try and shine one of those blue lights around to see if there's any evidence of anything down there? Was anything found? I don't know. I mean, if you were the buyer of a home, no matter how hard you scrub or what you use to clean up, there will always be forensic evidence left. You can't get rid of it all. You just can't. If you were the new buyer of a home that a murder happened on the front lawn and the defense team said to you and said, listen, we really think maybe something happened in this house. Would you let us come in with a team, a CSI team, and take a look around your basement or the rest of your house, or just shine a light around? We promise we won't disrupt anything. I don't know. I don't have any inside information on that. I'm just thinking if I was on the defense team, that's what I would try to do. Because the inside of that house was never searched in this case by law enforcement, by Canton PD, by Massachusetts State Police. It was never searched. They never even went into that house to see if they had those kind of glasses in the house, which would be something that I would do. I'm not a detective. I'm not a law enforcement. I'm a lawyer. But I would say, well, we need to know if he came from inside the house. So let's go in there and see if they have any of these other glasses inside the house. I don't know. It just seems like it defies logic that wasn't done. Hospice Jess, thank you for your super chat. This case is so confusing. What's my theory of the case? I think the investigation was bungled. I don't know whether it was intentional or whether it was grossly negligent. I think there are a lot of things that should have been done that weren't done, that now it may be too late to do. And I think this is going to be a very interesting trial to watch. But when I hear somebody say, who is Karen Reed anyway? She's nobody. Why would they even frame her? That gets my attention. Because if it can happen to Karen Reed, it can happen to you and me. Peter Estrada says intentional. Allie B, the lack of investigation is insane. Amy V, yes, never would a dead cop with suspicious marks on his body found outside frozen with a huge investigation in my city, Toronto. The police are like royals here, if not cover up. Yeah, and what I also said on Court TV was that when I said on Court TV that I think that those marks on John O'Keefe's right arm were clearly made from a dog attack, And then Jennifer Koffenhofer said, oh, all of a sudden, everybody who's not an MD or a PhD thinks that these wounds on his arm were caused by a dog attack. There's no way they were. And everyone's, and then I said, well, I may not be an MD or a PhD, but I do have 30 years of litigation experience, and I've handled hundreds, if not thousands, of motor vehicle accident cases. And I can tell you with 100% certainty that the injuries that I see depicted in that photograph of John O'Keefe's right arm were not caused by a low impact motor vehicle accident, pedestrian versus black Lexus SUV. They just weren't. They just weren't. Yeah. Amy, the house would be opened up to the police to investigate, keep warm, and talk to all involved. Patriotic. Neither Canton Police nor Massachusetts State Police bothered to even string up some crime scene tape to protect the area where Officer O'Keefe was found. Thank you for covering. You're welcome. No, they didn't. They certainly did not. Thank you, Kelly Casano, for your very generous super sticker. I appreciate you. Brooklyn Pezola. They never found his tissue or blood on the car. No, but they did lie about finding a human hair in the bumper, and it's since been discovered that that was not a human hair. So there's that. Thank you, Mr. C. This case needed another voice. Thank you. I'm looking at this with a fresh set of eyes, and I'm really not believing what I'm reading. Like, the more I read it and then go back and analyze it, because as a lawyer, you're supposed to be analytical and be able to compare versions of stories and court documents. And this is their current theory of the case, the prosecution's. We read the witness statements together. We went through them. Did they find the human hair during the blizzard? No, they say it was attached to her bumper. Karen Reed's bumper. After that car, by the way, was towed on the day of the incident. And, of course, the time that it was towed is a fakakta, based on Karen's parents' Ring camera footage, says one time. And then the Trooper Proctor's report says a different time. So that's all fakakta. But after that car was towed, I think it's 40 miles to Dighton, from Dighton back to the Canton PD. They said, and we looked at this the other day too, that there were pieces of taillight glass or plastic, whatever that, fragments on her bumper after it was towed. It's 40 minutes. I don't know how many miles it is from Dighton back to Canton PD. If anybody has the access to the Google. Yeah, exactly. Wicked psyched. Yeah, all the pieces of glass were laying on the, after that long ride on a tow truck. Was it a flatbed? All right, no, we're not going to say that, but it's fakakta. We say that in New York. Yeah, it stayed on the car through 70 plus miles of driving through a blizzard. Yeah, they're still there. Still there. So, I don't know. I would appreciate it if you're in the chat, if you're not redirecting people other places. I would never do that to another creator, and I would not expect people to do that to me either. So if there's something that you want to watch right now instead of me, please, you are free to go and watch it. But to direct my people that are watching me to another stream is not really cool. So please don't do that. Bob Weir says it was towed 40 miles in the snow, but the hair and the taillight stayed. Yeah. Yeah, Bob Weir, it's so good to see you again. So there's that. All right, let's get back to this. As they arrived in the area of 34 Fairview, Miss Roberts stated that the defendant screamed, "There he is, I see him," from inside the vehicle, and screamed to be let out. Even after initially exiting the vehicle, Ms. Roberts stated that she still could not see the victim in the conditions, and further stated that his body was covered in snow. She stated that the victim's body was approximately 12 feet away from the roadway. She observed him to have a swollen right eye with a laceration above it and blood around his nose and mouth. Ms. Roberts stated that they immediately began CPR and Ms. McCabe called 911. Ms. Roberts stated that she observed the victim to be lying on his back with his arms by his side. She noticed that his right eye was swollen shut and that there was blood coming from his nose and mouth. So they repeated that twice. I don't know if they meant to do that, but that emphasizes to me that he looked like he may have been in some sort of an altercation or fight. I don't know. Common sense, right? You don't get a black eye swollen shut from being backed into by an SUV. You just don't. So Carrie Roberts is really the only person who is talking about the other injuries that she observed. A right swollen eye with a laceration above it and blood around his nose and mouth. And then she says, blood coming from his nose and mouth. So not just around his nose and mouth, but coming from his nose and mouth. I wonder if they meant to delete one of these sentences and they didn't. And they just did it. They just forgot. Possible. When the paramedics arrived and lifted the victim's body onto the stretcher, Miss Roberts observed the grass underneath the victim's back not covered in snow, as the remainder of the area was. The defendant repeatedly asked Ms. Roberts, Ms. McCabe, and the officers and paramedics on scene, "Is he dead?" repeating that phraseology numerous times to each. Doesn't seem so out of the realm of things that you might say if you discover your boyfriend's body on the lawn of the place that he was met before. The defendant further grabbed Ms. Roberts by the arm at one point and asked her if they were really working on John or was he already dead. In addition, Trooper Buchanan interviewed Nicholas and Karina Kolokithas. This is the Greek couple that somebody mentioned in their statement. I did not see their witness statement, so this is fresh for me. Both were present with the group at Waterfall on the evening of January 28th. They arrived there at approximately 9 and 9:30 p.m., respectively, as they came in separate cars following their daughter's high school basketball game. They had, so that the basketball game comes in here too. They had known the victim for approximately 5 to 6 years and had met the defendant a handful of times. They stated that the victim and the defendant arrived at the Waterfall together at approximately 11 p.m., arriving from C.F. McCarthy's across the street. Again, they keep mentioning this. How does everyone know that they came from C.F. McCarthy's across the street? Did they announce it? I don't know. But it seems to be a detail that is mentioned many, many times for a reason, I submit to you, for a reason. Mrs. Kolokithas spoke for a period of time with the defendant, Karen Reed, and observed her to be drinking vodka soda cocktails while at the bar. She also recalled the defendant pushing quite a bit. So she's saying she also recalled Karen Reed pushing quite a bit, in quotes, for a member of the group, Christopher Albert, the owner of a local pizza shop, to go across the street after leaving the bar to keep partying while he made pies for everyone. That's the first time I'm hearing that scenario. Anybody else? Has that information been out there for a long time? It hasn't been in any of the court documents that I've read. Yes, Charlene, I have seen the autopsy photos. We're going to get into those a bit more tomorrow. All new, Scott? This is all new? All this about Karen Reed pushing for them to go to Chris Albert's pizzeria so he could make pizza and they could keep on. Karen was joking around. Jojo, first I heard it. Oh, Suzanne said that's been out there for a bit. Scott says, yes, I've heard it. Some people says it was never mentioned before. So maybe it was mentioned in gossip, but nobody's ever seen it in a document. I don't know. But it's the first time I'm hearing it. So it should be noted here also that Chris Albert is the father of Colin Albert. Christopher Albert is also the brother of Brian Albert, whose house they go to on 34 Fairview. When it was time to leave, Mrs. Kolokithas indicated that she walked outside with Ms. McCabe and observed the victim and the defendant to walk out together and proceed to the left of the driveway and up Washington Street, where their vehicle was parked along the curb, facing back up toward the waterfall. Mrs. Kolokikis indicated that her vehicle was also parked along Washington Street, but further down and facing the opposite direction. From there, she observed the defendant walking toward the driver's door of her black Lexus SUV. She further indicated that during the course of her conversation that evening with the defendant, this is the first time I've heard this, the defendant, Karen Reed, complained about the victim's mother and the lack of private time the couple had for vacations because of the children, their activities, and responsibilities. She also described her as fine and did not believe the defendant to be overly intoxicated. Anybody ever heard that before? That this other witness at the table said that Karen was complaining about John O'Keefe's mother? Peggy? I guess her name's Peggy. Nope, Suzanne doesn't recall that. And Suzanne seems to have her finger on the pulse of this case. I'm going to highlight some of these comments to come back to later. First time we've heard of this is back after this. H-Bag says, never. This case is insane. Then somebody says, no, it's not, meaning no, it's not the first time we've heard this. But again, if the defense was just provided with the grand jury testimony, and this is in the grand jury testimony, now they have to. Oh, TB did mention it before during a show? Okay. But then other people say, no, nothing. So I'm not sure where this, if it was hearsay, people were just, buzzing about it. But now it's in the official court documents. Why is anything about John O'Keefe's mom pertinent? Because, Maria, I think they're trying to say that they were in a fight and that she punched him or hit him in the head or something and had a reason to want to kill him. I mean, that's what, to me, this goes to motive. That is what they're going to say, that they were, because every other witness that we read statements of says that they were getting along. There were no fights happening at the Waterfall Bar, and John and Karen seem to be very happy. So I have questions. This is also designed to turn the O'Keefe family against Karen Reed. I don't know. Jay Burke says they argued in Aruba over a very good reason. Yeah, I think he didn't come back to the room or something until like 3 a.m. They were on vacation with the kids. Aaron says John O'Keefe fought for those kids in court against his mother. That's interesting. Rachel says, kind of weird. One fight and murder sounds drastic. Yep. No, Patriot, I have not seen a case where the prosecution changes the story so much. I definitely have not. Wow. Yeah, it did mention that she didn't seem very intoxicated. So which is it? She was drunk? She hit him drunk driving, or she didn't? I'm so confused. And if I'm confused, and I have a law degree, how do you think a jury's going to feel? Thank you, Diana, for your super chat. I was a pedestrian hit by a pickup. I had 33 bones broken with left side of face and nose broken. I was black and blue everywhere, not just a black eye. I'm going to submit to you that that was probably a higher speed accident. And that's horrible. I'm so sorry that you were hit by a pickup truck. That is horrifying injuries. And I'm not discounting your injuries at all. That's horrible. But the marks on his arm. He wasn't dragged. They're not alleging that he was dragged by the car. On January 30th, Trooper Buchanan and Proctor interviewed the Canton firefighter, Katie McLaughlin. Katie McLaughlin had been assigned to Station 1 on the 29th and indicated that approximately 6 a.m., Canton Fire and EMS had been dispatched to 34 Fairview for a male party in the snow and unresponsive. Upon arrival, Miss McLaughlin observed the victim to have trauma to his face and eye area and vomit in his mouth. She observed the victim to be dressed in jeans, socks, and one black Nike sneaker. The victim's shirts were cut and his chest exposed for chest compressions. Ms. McLaughlin had exited the ambulance to speak with the defendant as to the victim's identity and medical history. The defendant provided the victim's name and date of birth. Ms. McLaughlin asked the defendant if she knew where the victim had suffered the trauma to his face and eye, and the defendant turned to her friend and stated repeatedly, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him," in response to the paramedic's question. Okay, so this seems to suggest to me that the paramedic took this to understand that she hit him in the face. Not that she hit him with her car. What say you? Becky, there's literally video of them at the waterfall that night hugging and kissing. I do want to show that video. I just don't know where to find a clean copy of it. But that's what I saw. That also shows him wearing a belt. They didn't find a belt with his clothes. Yeah, Lizika, the key was lack of bruising all over, right, and no lower body trauma. The trauma was all above the waist. It was the right arm, the face, fractured skull, laceration to the back of the head. Yeah, Carol says, Carol Mary, no injuries on John from the waist down. It says you can die from being hit while backing up, but you'd have to be hit so hard to go flying. Also, why no tire marks on the ground around the body? Yep, all questions that I have. No tire marks. He'd have to be thrown because he was 12 feet from the curb. Suzanne says the paramedic's also a part of the McAlbert clan. I'm not disputing what she's saying, but if she says that the defendant, that Karen Reed turned to her friend and said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him," this is in response to her question saying, how did he get the trauma to his face and eye? She slap him across the face. I don't think that she's saying, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him with my car." There's a lot of questions of fact here. And I don't know. No, none of us were there. We don't know. This is the prosecution's theory. This is their theory. These are their words that they filed with the court on January 4th of 2024, 2 years. I mean, not January 24th, January 4th. Almost 2 years after this incident. Following their initial witness interviews on January 29th, Troopers B and Proctor then proceeded to the Good Samaritan to view the victim. They observed 6 bloodied lacerations varying in length on his right arm. The cuts extended from his forearm to his bicep. Notice they are calling them lacerations. The troopers, the medical examiner is going to call them abrasions. The cuts extended from his forearm to his bicep. Both of the victim's eyes were swollen shut and black and blue in color. The troopers observed a cut to the right eyelid area of the victim. The victim's clothing, consisting of blue jeans, an orange t-shirt, long sleeve gray shirt, and boxer shorts, were soaking wet and saturated with blood and vomit. The victim was also observed to have one black Nike sneaker with a white Nike logo on the side. No belt is mentioned, but he's wearing a belt in the video. One sneaker is mentioned, and that other sneaker wasn't discovered until a long time after, because apparently the 5 Canton police officers that arrived on the scene immediately weren't able to find the other sneaker, but the other sneakers eventually found in the immediate area. This is what Proctor said. Thanks, Scott. Thanks for staying. Have a good night. This is not what the ME said. This is what Proctor and Trooper B observed. They're going to say what the ME said in a minute. The victim's medical records were admitted as an exhibit before the grand jury in this matter as well. Throughout said medical records, the attending physician and medical personnel described the victim's injuries at length. Said description of his injuries and medical conditions include right superior orbital ridge region, approximately 7 millimeter laceration and surrounding soft tissue swelling contusion, positive breath sounds bilaterally, pulseless, positive superficial abrasions of the right forearm. Time of death is noted at 7:50 a.m. He was transported shortly after 6:04 a.m. They may have tried to warm his body. They don't say. We don't have access to the medical records because HIPAA. Breath sounds, I know. Why are they saying they saw breath sounds? His eyes are a mess. On January 31st, Dr. Irene Scortibello from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner conducted the autopsy of Mr. O'Keefe, not officer. The doctor advised the troopers that she observed several abrasions to the victim's right forearms, 2 swollen black eyes, a small cut above the right eye, a cut to the left side of his nose, an approximately 2-inch laceration to the back of his head, and multiple skull fractures that resulted in bleeding of the brain. Dr. Scortibello further advised the troopers that the victim's pancreas was a dark red color, indicating hypothermia was a contributing factor to his death. Dr. Scortibello opined from her examination that the significant blunt force trauma injuries occurred prior to Mr. O'Keefe becoming hypothermic, as evidenced by hemorrhaging in his pancreas and stomach. Mr. O'Keefe had arrived at the Good Samaritan Medical Center with a body temperature reading in the low 80s. The doctor opined that the extensive injuries to his head likely rendered Mr. O'Keefe incapacitated. The doctor further opined that upon viewing Mr. O'Keefe's injuries and her examination of the body, she observed no signs of Mr. O'Keefe being involved in any type of physical altercation or fight. Why would she say that? Unless Trooper Proctor and or Trooper B were in the room and said, we need to know if you think he was involved in a fight. Yes. Garrett's here. Why do you think she would say that? I don't know. Joe Biffley was dying in pain while the occupants of the house were coming up with a plan. Mary says people come out of the house if a stranger dog poops on their lawn. That is true. H-Bag surmises that Proctor may have told her to say that. Miss Violet says that's a strange thing to put in a report, isn't it? I think so. Medical examiner is supposed to determine how someone died, not how they didn't die. Somebody said, Ashley at CNC, just as a toss back to the new owners, if someone told me my house might have had a situation, I would let them look so I don't get blamed for any situations 10 years later or something. That's a great point. That's a great point. In addition, Dr. Scortibello testified extensively regarding her examination and findings before the grand jury. In her testimony, the doctor described the medical definitions of a laceration, a contusion, and an abrasion, as well as the differences between the three. The doctor testified that the victim had abrasions on his right arm. She described abrasions as, quote, scratches caused by a blunt object, contact with a blunt object, end quote. She went on to describe them as a cluster of them on his right upper arm and on his right forearm, mostly linear and ranging in size from a few millimeters to up to 7 centimeters. Dr. Scortibello testified that throughout her thorough external examination of the victim's body, she observed no signs of an altercation or fight. So again, the prosecution is the only one asking questions during the grand jury testimony, and the prosecution must have said or asked, Did you see any signs of an altercation or fight? Because she had written that in her original autopsy report. The doctor also testified extensively to the injuries or swelling of the victim's eyes. Dr. Scortibello testified that from her examination of the victim, both external and internal, that the bleeding and subsequent swelling around his eyes was related to the very small fractures in the skull. She testified specifically, quote, that the injury initiated or started in the back of the head, caused all of the fractures in the skull, and then the eyes got red or black or purple because of the seepage of the blood from the small blood vessels. The neuropathology report, completed by Dr. Renee Stonebridge, also of the Office of Chief Medical Examiner, are consistent with Dr. Scortibello's findings. Well, that's a very brief statement. I submit to you, my friends, that the neuropathology report completed by Dr. Renee Stonebridge are consistent with her findings. I'd love to see that report. Because trust me when I tell you that if it agreed with every single thing that they just said, they would have specifically spelled it out. No, the body was not cremated. On January 29th, this is the same day as the incident, Troopers B and Proctor arrived at a residence in Dighton, Mass., the home of the defendant's parents. Upon their arrival, they observed a large black Lexus SUV bearing Massachusetts plates, registered to the defendant Karen Reed, parked outside the garage door in the driveway to the home. The troopers observed the rear right passenger side tail light to be shattered, now it's shattered, and a large red piece of plastic to be missing from the tail light. The troopers were invited into the home and observed the defendant seated on the living room couch. The defendant agreed to speak with the troopers. The defendant indicated to the troopers that she had met the victim at C.F. McCarthy's bar in Canton at approximately 9 p.m. the evening prior. The victim had been there with friends prior to her arrival. She stated that the victim was drinking beers and she was drinking vodka sodas. She described the glassware she was drinking out of as vase style. The defendant stated that she and the victim left C.F. McCarthy's and went to the waterfall, but denied that she had taken any drink from one bar to the next. So they specifically asked her that because they had already spoken to the McCabe's, who said she brought a glass with her. She stated that they were at the waterfall for approximately an hour, and during that time, there were no arguments amongst anyone present there. When she and the victim were leaving the waterfall, she stated they were invited to a house on Fairview Road. The defendant stated that she had dropped the victim at the house on Fairview, and went home since she was having stomach issues at the previous bar. The defendant stated that she dropped the victim off, then made a 3-point turn in the street and left. She stated that she did not see the victim enter the residence. The defendant indicated that she first observed the broken taillight in the morning and did not know how she had broken it the previous evening. The victim was uninjured when she dropped him off at the house. However, when she discovered him the next morning, she observed him lying face up, snow on his legs, his eyes swollen, and blood coming from his nose and mouth. She stated that she began providing him with mouth-to-mouth. The defendant further stated that she had attempted to contact the victim throughout the night, calling and texting him numerous times with no response. She stated that they had a verbal argument that morning over what the defendant fed the victim's niece for breakfast. All right. We saw this in another person's statement. This was not Karen's statement. As far as I can recall, they're saying Karen said that they had a verbal argument over what the defendant fed the victim's niece for breakfast. Wasn't that a different witness that said that? Or are they saying that Karen said that? Yeah, Ed, who says 3-point turn? Don't you just say a U-turn? Scott Robertson, there is security camera footage of Karen leaving with a gloss. It says, but I think you mean a glass. Okay, I want to see that footage. Rick Hamill, it's impossible that she hit him. The Nagel party literally pulled up a few seconds after Karen got there. They would have seen everything. Case closed. They also did see, which they failed to mention in this statement of facts, that Ryan Nagel said she was alone in the car. He was sitting in the passenger side of that Ford F-150. Scott McGinnis, is that new? Never saw it written. Karen said she did a 3-point turn. I think they did say that another time. Garrett says, Nagel is a witness that the Commonwealth wishes doesn't exist. Yes, Marie, this is the detective saying what she said. This is Proctor saying this is what she said. Okay, where was I? Where was I? She stated that she began providing him with mouth-to-mouth. The defendant further stated that she'd attempted to contact the victim throughout the night, calling and texting him numerous times with no response. She stated that they had a verbal argument that morning over what the defendant fed the victim's niece for breakfast. The troopers further asked the defendant for contact information relating to the people she had indicated were present at the bars. The defendant obliged, and prior to providing said information, the troopers observed the defendant to enter a numerical passcode into her phone to unlock it prior to retrieving said data. That's the first time I'm seeing that. The black Lexus SUV was seized from the driveway of the defendant's parents' home in Dighton on January 29th. You notice how they don't say what time it was seized? Left that out. They left it out. Because what? Daylight savings time? Because Karen's parents' ring footage was inaccurate with the time? Because there's about an hour discrepancy between the time in the official report of Trooper Proctor about what time he seized the car and the ring camera footage. So notice how the time is left out here. The black Lexus SUV was seized from the driveway of the defendant's parents' home in Dighton on January 29th. The vehicle was then transported via tow to the Canton Police Department. Again, Canton PD don't have jurisdiction over this case anymore. This is now an MSP case. Why was it towed all the way to Canton? I'm just saying. On February 1st, members of the Massachusetts State Police Crime Scene Services section, a crime lab chemist, and Trooper John Paul of the Massachusetts State Police Collision Analysis and Reconstruction section, CARS, responded to the department. Okay, so that's the incident was on the 29th, 30, 31, 3 days later. 3 days later, after this car was towed from Dighton, they observed fragments of broken glass on the rear bumper of the vehicle. The right rear passenger side taillight was shattered and pieces were observed missing from the red and clear areas. On the right side of the rear tailgate, a deep scratch and minor dent were observed. On the right side of the rear bumper, above a small red light, 2 scratches were observed, as well as one area where the paint was chipped off. Troopers from the CARS unit performed a rapid acceleration, forward and reverse tests with the vehicle, noted no deficiencies with the vehicle's braking system or other operations. The troopers placed a training figure resembling a human, approximately 6 feet in height, behind the Lexus. The vehicle was operated by a CARS trooper and documented with video from crime scene. Documented with video from crime scene. What video from the crime scene? What am I missing? The vehicle was operated by a CARS trooper and documented with video from crime scene. Anyone? Bueller? The vehicle was placed in reverse. started to travel toward the training figure. The rear view camera within the vehicle was operating properly as displayed on a screen in the center of the dashboard and provided a 360-degree overhead visual. As the Lexus traveled closer to the figure, both auditory and visual cues within the vehicle sounded off, indicating an obstruction to the rear. In addition, forensic scientist Maureen Hartnett responded to the Canton Police Department that date and took samples from the Lexus. She observed damage to the rear of the vehicle on the passenger side, including a dent with chipped paint in the trunk door, a broken taillight, and scratches on the bumper. An apparent hair was noted on the rear passenger side panel. Apparent glass was also noted on the rear bumper. Also on January 29th, the Massachusetts State Police Special Emergency Response Team, CERT, was activated to assist in searching for possible evidence outside 34 Fairview Road. Members from the CERT team located a black Nike sneaker with a white Nike logo along the side, matching the one worn by the victim at the time his body was discovered. In the same area where the body had been recovered, 2 red plastic pieces of a taillight were located, consistent to the pieces missing from the defendant's black Lexus. 1 piece of clear plastic taillight was located in the same area as well, also consistent with the broken taillight of the Lexus. The CERT team discovered these items after digging through the still falling snow. They don't say what time. Notice the time is left out. People have pointed out that something like 12 to 20 inches of snow had fallen since the body was discovered at 6 a.m. Why now? But now they're saying, of course, they discovered these items after digging through the snow, that the sneaker was not on top of the snow and the taillight was not on top of the snow, because we've been saying, why didn't Canton PD find it when there was 2 inches of snow on the ground? If it was right there, are we supposed to believe Canton PD is incompetent and that the 5 or 6 officers that were on the scene couldn't find the sneaker or the taillight pieces? They were only found after that car was towed back to Canton PD. I don't know. It's pointing out some facts. Scott McGinnis magic. Sneaker shows up in the taillight 12 hours later after they took the possession of her Lexus. Not sus at all. No crime scene photos were taken, Nikki. No, they just weren't. They just weren't taken. On January 31, investigators observed video from the Ring cameras affixed to 1 Meadows Avenue. That's the residence of Mr. O'Keefe. The video was observed by utilizing the Ring application on the victim's cell phone. The data in the application showed that 2 cameras are connected on the victim's account under his email. The 2 cameras cover the front door and the driveway to his home. From approximately 6 p.m. on January 28th through 6 a.m. on January 29th, the Ring application showed approximately 15 events between the 2 cameras at the residence. Investigators observed on the Ring video from the driveway camera the defendant's SUV leaving the right garage door and traveling out of the driveway onto Meadows Avenue and turning left onto Pleasant Street at approximately 5:08 a.m. on January 29th. Investigators were not able to locate any Ring video of the same SUV arriving at the home prior to that. Specifically, no video of the defendant arriving at the victim's home after leaving the Fairview residence in the early morning hours of January 29th was contained within the said available footage. The victim's Chevrolet Traverse SUV was parked in the far right corner of the driveway as the defendant's SUV exited in reverse from the garage, coming close to the victim's SUV. As the defendant's vehicle exits the driveway, the troopers observed her right passenger side taillight to be broken. Troopers observed that where, when? On the video? So who's to say she didn't break it when she hit his car instead of coming close to it? You can see the other car move when she hits it. But they know there's receipts on this now, so they have to be careful about what they say. On February 3rd, Trooper Evan Brandt from Crime Scene Services arrived with Trooper Proctor at the home, this is John O'Keefe's home, and documented all sides of the traverse and the garage doors. No damage was observed anywhere on either the vehicle or the doors. This is 5 days after the incident. No fragments or pieces of a broken taillight were discovered in the victim's driveway, nor are any observed on the ground or anywhere in the driveway when the defendant's vehicle is seen leaving the driveway at 5:08 a.m. On February 1, Troopers B and Keefe traveled to CF McCarthy's bar and smoked with the manager of the bar. They reviewed and secured video from inside the establishment from January 28th and receipts. From the interior surveillance video, the troopers observed Mr. O'Keefe walk into the establishment wearing jeans, black Nike sneakers, a gray and dark gray long-sleeve shirt, and a dark baseball hat with an American flag on the front at approximately 7:37 p.m., along with his friend Michael Camerano. Approximately an hour later, at 8:51 p.m., the defendant enters the bar wearing a black jacket, black boots, black pants, a handbag or small purse, and a white shirt underneath her jacket. 7 minutes later, at approximately 8:58 p.m., the bartender hands the defendant a tall cylinder-style glass containing a clear liquid with a lime in it. At approximately 9:15 p.m., the victim hands the defendant a cylinder-style glass with a clear liquid and a lime in it. At the following times, the troopers observed in the video the defendant receiving a shot glass with a clear liquid in it, which she subsequently pours into her cylinder glass. 9:20, 9:33, 10:22, and 10:29 p.m. At approximately 9:57 p.m., the bartender is observed handing the defendant a tall cylinder-style glass with a clear liquid in it and a shot glass with a clear liquid in it, for a total of 7 drinks the defendant receives and consumes during her time at this bar. At approximately 10:40 p.m., the victim and the defendant are observed leaving the bar with the defendant holding her last drink in her right hand as they exit the door to the establishment. Has anybody seen that video? They're saying the tall cylinder style glass, that is not a cocktail glass, that she is seen with a tall cylinder style glass leaving her house. I mean, not her house, CF McCarthy's, not a cocktail glass. Charlene says the ring video from John's house was deleted, and mind you, Proctor had John's phone. Interesting. Has anybody seen that video? I haven't seen that video. Okay. Because I submit to you that if she did 7 shots or had 7 drinks, that when she got over to the next bar, the Waterfall, where the other witnesses say that she was not hammered, she would be hammered. She's small. She's tiny. She probably weighs 110 pounds, 120 pounds. And she had 7 drinks in that short of a time. She would have been slurring. She would have been bobbing and weaving. Was she buying around for people? I don't know. But I haven't seen that video, so I can't really opine on it. I'm just saying, if she did drink all those drinks and they say she drank all those drinks, she would be hammered. And she would have appeared hammered. But nobody says that. On February 1st, troopers traveled to the Waterfall bar, reviewed and secured both interior and exterior camera footage, as well as receipts from that establishment. From the interior camera, the troopers observed the victim and the defendant enter the bar at approximately 10:54 p.m. At approximately 12:10 a.m., the defendant walks out with two females, leaving through the front door. Moments later, the victim, John O'Keefe, standing alone at the table, takes a sip from a short cocktail glass and walks out the front door, holding the glass in his right hand. From the exterior camera, the troopers observed the victim, John O'Keefe, walk out at approximately 12:11 a.m., carrying a short cocktail glass in his right hand, meet up with the defendant, and then the two walk together towards Washington Street. The troopers also observed from this exterior camera that it appeared to have just begun snowing with a light coating on the ground and cars in the parking lot. Has anybody seen that footage of him walking out with the glass? Amy said if she drank that much, she would have been dead. My father's keeper said both John and Karen walked out with that. Well, they're saying Karen walked out from the first bar, McCarthy's, CF McCarthy's with a glass, and then John walked out with a cocktail glass from the waterfall. Nobody's seen that? No, not public. She was drinking out of a vase-style glass at the first bar, she says. Linda says, no. Remember, Officer O'Keefe let her drive over to the house. Yeah. 7 drinks, says Tiff. Nobody's seen it. So these people are habitual glass thieves, says Debbie Jo. We don't know John's toxicology. That's not public as far as I know. Mel Mack. Does anybody know? Has anybody seen that? I haven't seen the original autopsy report. I'm just reporting on what's in the court documents about the autopsy report. So I don't know. She bought a round of drinks, Care Bear says. Each bag not public. She had that many. Don't you think somebody would have had to carry her out? Yeah, she definitely would have been bobbing and weaving, walking into the waterfall. Oh, Rochella, don't go chasing waterfalls. You always thinking song lyrics too? That is great, Rochella. I'm going to leave that up on the screen. Rochella is one of my other amazing mods. She's watching, and she's funny too. I think in song lyrics, so they always somehow come into the stream. And when I was a kid, my parents loved Neil Diamond, and they would have Neil Diamond on repeat all day and night long on vinyl. And as I was getting ready to come on today, that song popped into my head, Hello Again by Neil Diamond. Hello again, hello. You know that song? I was thinking of that. Okay, and back to these documents. How much more do we have to go? Let's see. They've got a very long theory of their case. All right, we've only got about a page and a half to go. So let's get back to it, and then we'll come for questions. On February 2nd, troopers Dunn and Moore were canvassing for video footage in relation to this investigation. They proceeded to the Edward J. Lynch house at, you're going to Pickwitside Farm on Pleasant Street in Canton. They were able to retrieve video footage from the town's IT director, who confirmed that the date and timestamps on the video were correct. The troopers also viewed and recovered video from the Canton Town Library, external cameras, and on February 3rd, from the Temple Beth Abraham. Both the library and the temple's cameras overlook Washington Street in Canton. The distance between these two buildings is approximately 1 mile. From the library video, at approximately 12:15 a.m., the troopers observed a large black SUV consistent with the defendant's Lexus traveling on Washington Street and continued toward the temple 4 minutes after the victim and the defendant exited the waterfall. At approximately 12:17 a.m., from the temple video, the troopers observed a large black SUV traveling by the building toward the intersection of Washington and Dedham Streets in the direction of Fairview Road. From the library video, at approximately 5:11 a.m., the troopers observed a large black SUV traveling down Sherman Street, taking a left onto Washington, and travel in the direction of the waterfall. At approximately 5:15 a.m., the troopers observed a large black SUV traveling away from the area of the waterfall on Washington Street, crossing over Sherman and continue on Washington toward the temple. From the temple video at approximately 5:18 a.m., the troopers observed a large black SUV traveling by the front of the building toward the intersection of Washington Street and Dedham Streets. In addition, the troopers received via a search warrant the defendant's Verizon cell phone records. Lieutenant Brian Tully of the Massachusetts State Police examined said records and was able to plot the defendant's movements while the phone was in use for various periods of time. The phone's movements coincided with the direction of travel of the black SUV observed on the videos from the library and the temple during both time frames. These videos and phone records on the morning of January 29th occur after the defendant spoke with Ms. McCabe on the phone, after directing the victim's niece to call Ms. McCabe, and after the defendant is seen on the victim's residence's Ring video leaving that home at 5:08 a.m. Furthermore, they evinced the defendant traveling in the direction of the home on Fairview prior to going to Ms. McCabe's home that morning. I have so many questions. This is like we could do a whole show on this, so we're going to save this for later. But what is apparently there's 2 minutes missing of the library footage. You guys have pointed that out. And this trooper who is it's Lieutenant Brian Tully who is examining the cell phone records and was able to plot. What experience does he have in electronic forensics? Does he have any experience in electronic forensics? Anyone? We could do a whole stream on that, and we will. Scott, this is all to do with nothing of importance. The library video from 12:30 is missing. That would show her taillight intact. But I think they're trying to say that, well, first of all, they don't have any plate on this. I submit to you that there's probably a lot of black SUVs. They don't say it's a Lexus. They're just saying a black SUV. And then they're using this Lieutenant Brian Tully to examine the video and the phone records to say that this was her. And they're trying to say, I think, is that before she went to Jen McCabe's house after 5 a.m, she drove by 34 Fairview. I think that's what they're trying to say. But your guess is as good as mine. On February 22nd, both the 10-year-old nephew, CF, and the 14-year-old niece, KF, of the victim were interviewed at the Norfolk Advocates for Children Center in Foxborough, Mass. Well, this is the first thing that they've done right, taking the children to an advocate center to get interviewed. The children indicated that they had lived with their uncle, the victim, for approximately 8 years following the passing of both their parents. Both children indicated that the victim and the defendant had started dating approximately 2 years ago, after having dated sometime before in the distant past. They both indicated that the defendant would stay over their house on Meadows Avenue several nights a week. PF stated that the defendant and the victim argued, quote, a decent amount of time. PF recalled a recent argument over groceries and the victim expressing and needing a break from the defendant. After that particular argument, the victim wanted the defendant to leave their house. However, she refused. PF indicated that he had left the home on January 28th at approximately 8 p.m. for a sleepover at a friend's house and was not present at the home overnight. PF indicated that neither he nor his sister had access to the Ring system, but believed that the defendant did from the family computer within the home. Okay, so these children were not interviewed. Oh, and notice First, they have the 10-year-old boy's initials as CF, and then they change it to PF. So I'm not really sure that this is the same person, but I think CF and PF, they're not interviewed until February 22nd. So this is more than 3 weeks later. 24 days later, and he's 10. KF, who is a 14-year-old girl, indicated during her interview that the defendant and the victim had argued a lot toward the end, approximately 2 to 3 times a week. She further stated that approximately a week before January 29th, she was sitting in the stairway inside the house while the victim and the defendant were arguing. KF stated that she heard the victim tell the defendant that their relationship had run its course and that it isn't healthy. She stated that the defendant did not want the relationship to end and refused to leave the house. KF stated that she had gone to bed approximately 11 p.m. on January 28th after her friend had left and was awoken by the defendant at approximately 4:30 a.m. with the defendant screaming and acting frantic. The defendant ran into the victim's bedroom to retrieve KF's cell phone, and KF then began texting and calling the victim with no response. The defendant then had KF call Miss McCabe and put the defendant on the phone with her. After speaking with Miss McCabe, the defendant left the house and told KF to call Mr. Camerano to come and pick her up. KF indicated during her interview that the defendant changed her story several times while speaking to Ms. McCabe on the phone, with initially the defendant stating that she and the victim got into an argument and she dropped him off. Okay. I have a lot of questions about these interviews with the children. A lot. Because children need to be interviewed, and all my friends in law enforcement will tell you that there are very specific techniques that need to be used when interviewing children. And it doesn't say who did the interviews. There's no mention of that here. On February 22nd, both the 10-year-old nephew and the 14-year-old niece were interviewed at the Norfolk Advocates for Children Center in Foxborough, Mass. There is no indication of who did this interview, and that, my friends, is critical. This needs to be a specially trained detective who is experienced in interviewing minors who are witnesses. How does it not say who did these interviews, what time they were done? I have questions. That is nuts. So that is a whole mess right there. That's a whole mess. That these children were not interviewed until 24 to 25 days after. Who knows who spoke to them in the meantime? Who knows if they were coached? Who knows if things were told to them about the relationship? Who knows? I don't know. But we don't know either based on this. And that is concerning to me. What say you? All right, we're almost done. On January 29th, the troopers also recovered Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone and were subsequently able to forensically extract the data from said phone. Their forensic examination of the call logs, voicemails, and text messages between the victim and the defendant, including the date of January 28th and 29th, detailed strains within their relationship. The victim's desire to end their relationship and the defendant's description of their relationship with them and the two children together as toxic. The troopers recovered several voicemails from the victim's phone from the defendant following the time period they were in front of the residence at 34 Fairview, in which the defendant screamed to the victim that she hated him. Has anybody heard any of those voicemails? Because somebody was putting some crazy stuff in my comments the other day, saying other things that she allegedly said in the voicemails, other than "I hate you." So I don't know if those voicemails were leaked. I don't know if this person in the comments was making stuff up. I want to know the chain of custody of this cell phone. If the cell phone was found under his body during transport by the Canton PD, where's the chain of custody on this? How did the troopers come into possession of it? I have a lot of questions about that. Did Trooper Proctor have possession of that phone personally for any extended period of time? Because it has been said, and photos have come out, that Trooper Michael Proctor's mother, the matriarch of that family, has called the McCabe or Albert family a second family to them. This is what they're trying to show here, that there's bias in this investigation and that he should have stepped away from this investigation. So I want to know a lot about the chain of custody of the trooper's cell phone. And I'm not denying that she probably left a lot of messages on his voicemail. She called him something like 49 times. How many of us want to take back a voicemail that we left angrily? Hating him that he wasn't picking up the phone, that he wasn't answering her calls? I don't know. Doesn't mean she killed him. If she killed him, why would she call him 49 times? Anybody. On January 29th, the defendant was transported from the scene to the Good Samaritan Medical Center. While there, blood was drawn pursuant to her medical diagnosis and treatment at that facility. Okay. The defendant was transported from the scene of 34 Fairview to Good Sam by who? By who? Did she go in the ambulance? Did the Canton PD drive her to Good Sam? She was transported by who? Does anybody know? Olivia, where are you when I need you? Olivia Benson. Proctor's mother, Care Bear says, that the Alberts were like her second family. Tiana says, wasn't it Jen McCabe? Did Jen McCabe take her to the hospital? I think she was hysterical. Somebody told me they put her on a Section 12 hold. Or they Section 12'd her, and that's like a 5150 hold here in New York. 72-hour hold because she may or may not have said she wanted to take her own life. I don't know. I have questions. While there, blood was drawn pursuant to her medical diagnosis and treatment at that facility. Okay, what was her medical diagnosis and treatment? What are they treating her for? The ethanol results from said records indicate that at 9:08 a.m. on the 29th, her blood had a reading of 93 milligrams per DL. Nicholas Roberts, a forensic toxicologist from the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab, performed both a serum conversion and retrograde extrapolation of said result, opining that Ms. Reed's BAC at that time on the 28th was 0.07 to 0.08%. So that was at 9:08 a.m. From his retrograde extrapolation analysis, he opined that her BAC around the time period of 12:45 a.m. would have been between 0.13% and 0.29%. Well, I'm no forensics expert, but I will get one to come in and discuss this with you. But I would submit to you that that's a hella discrepancy. 0.13 to 0.19, that's a pretty wide range. I think maybe an expert would be able to pin it down. a little bit closer than that. That's more than double. Maybe she went home and drank because she was mad that he didn't come home or answer her calls. You can't opine to her BAC around 12:45 a.m. when everyone said she didn't appear drunk. I don't know. I think that's shoddy at best. What do you think? What do you think? Hence, they are saying that because they have all of this evidence, they should be entitled to the Boston Magazine, September 27th, 2023 article called The Karen Reed Case in Canton, the Killing That Tore Town Apart, authored by Gretchen Voss, which is attached here. We're not going to read it right now, but you can find it. Just Google Boston Magazine article, September 27, 2023, Gretchen Voss talks about how the town is being torn apart. And because in this article, the reporter details all these conversations, they want a copy of the reporter's notes, video, any recordings that were taken. Because this motion was just submitted on January 4th, there's no decision on that yet. So before we look at this video from our guest who's going to join us tomorrow, I'm just going to go to the chat. Seal of approval. Thank you so much for your super chat. Where's Chloe? I want to rescue Chloe. Chloe's gone. Ed, thanks for being a member for 2 months. Boy, do I wish this trial was going to be televised. I really would love to see the defense question these witnesses. Oh, it is going to be televised. It is. But it's going to be in March 12th, to be exact. But they do allow cameras in Massachusetts, and all the hearings so far have been televised, so we're here for it. Stephanie Lewis, a medical examiner, said the black eyes were from the fractures in his head or brain trauma, and the bleeding in the head causes the black eyes. The medical examiner said they call it raccoon eyes. So someone's hit in the back of the head with something like a baseball bat or a weight, that could be blunt force trauma. That would cause a laceration in the back of someone's skull, enough to cause multiple skull fractures. Ranger Joe, I'd like to know where John's police partners or department are on this. So would I. Haven't seen much. Don't know much about that. Diana, thank you again. That was your incident. LTL2 crime. Thank you so much. Your super chat. The Commonwealth's taillight theory has changed more than 3 times. Just keep changing it until something sticks. Janice became a new member, and Garrett gifted 5 members. Thank you so much. I don't know if this is the same Garrett who's coming on the show tomorrow, but I'm going to show you something. Let's look at this. Let's look at this. Let's look at the autopsy photos that have been released. I'm going to show you a video from a creator on YouTube, and then I'm going to tell you that he's going to come on the show tomorrow to talk to you and me about his thoughts on this, because he had not heard about this case, and I really didn't want to tell him too much about it before getting his opinion. So give me 1 second. Let's just put up a trigger warning on this. And actually, all right, I'm going to try and just show the arm photos right now. Okay. Trigger. This is victim John O'Keefe's right arm. This is what the medical examiner called abrasions. Do you see these marks? Abrasions. And when I said on Court TV that this was clearly the result of an animal attack, I was laughed at by former FBI agent Jennifer Coffendorfer, who said, "No way are those from an animal attack." Bicep, forearm, right hand. But no indication that he was in a fight or altercation, says the medical examiner. Left hand. Laceration to the back of the skull. What say you? What say you? Tissue samples were either never taken or lost of his arm. So there's that. They can't be tested for canine DNA. Say you. I don't think I need to be a medical doctor to tell you what I think they look like. But, according to the other guest on Court TV, I'm nuts. So I've been called worse. Deb Galloway looks like a dog to me. Thank you, Jay Burke. Abrasions are like rug burns. This is ridiculous. An abrasion is a scrape, my friends. I get people in the comments all the time. They're trying to tell me the medical definition and the difference between a laceration and an abrasion. I am a trial attorney. I have been litigating injury cases for 30 years. I have been reviewed tens of thousands of pages of medical records. An abrasion is a scrape. That is a laceration. Come on. Sandra, I don't understand how this can be done by a car either. Looks animal to me, except the back of the skull that looks like he was hit with something. Right. So perhaps, maybe, I don't know, this could be the defense's theory. He was hit with something, and then somehow the dog got involved. I don't know. But the dog is gone. The dog was rehomed. The family dog of 7 years was rehomed. How convenient for the state's case. Thank you, Deanna. If the investigator said he was hit by a car, they will naturally tailor the findings. Correct. I do have a picture of his face, and I'm going to trigger warn you again. Because here it is. I'm going to show it briefly. You can't see a lot here because they've got a cervical collar on him. It's the back of his head. Can't see a lot from this picture, and it's kind of blurry. But what I do want to show you is a video from a creator who has a channel called American Standard Canine. And what he does for a living is train canine police dogs and attack dogs. And his name is Garrett Wing, and he's going to come on the show tomorrow with me at 1 p.m. Eastern, so you don't want to miss this. Here's just one of the videos on his channel, and I suggest that you go take a look at it, because for all the people who are saying this injury could not be caused by an animal, I show you this. And this is just one of the videos on his channel, of which he has many. See if I can find a better format for this. Let me know that you can hear this.
Here we go. This is Canine Diesel, a Belgian Malinois. He's a badass dog, and today we're taking a bite from him. Yeah. That's why I call them land sharks. Watch them shake. That's a strong dog. Yo! Ooh, no. Oh, can't even get my hand out. That's a good boy right there. About dislocated my shoulder. That was just a baby bite. Next, we're going to do a long one. Let's throw him back out. That's a strong dog. 6 years old in his prime. Woo! Oh! Ooh. Oh! It'll take the breath out of you. So that dog bites hard. A lot of power in the shake. That's a strong dog with many street bites under his belt. Canine Diesel, kick my ass.
Look
Here we go.
This is
Canine Diesel, a Belgian Malinois. He's a badass dog, and today we're taking a bite from him.
That's just one of the videos. He trains these dogs. This is what he does for a living.
Here we go. This is Canine.
Hold on. Let's see. He has some crazy videos on here of the dogs that he's trained.
I've been training and working with dogs for over 20 years. My father's a police canine handler since 1981, so literally hit the ground running with dogs in my life. And I grew up around them. They're basically my brothers. I saw my first police dog deployment for a suspect, and I mean, talk about getting hooked. I was one of the youngest canine handlers ever. I didn't want to water down my ability to be like a high-speed police canine handler and trainer, training like other people's poodles and chihuahuas. I realized how much harder it actually is to train older dogs, dogs that maybe weren't born with the talent or the ability to learn like police dogs are. My favorite compliment to this day is, and I get it all the time, is this is not even the same dog that we brought to you. This is a better version of what we brought to you. Yeah, it's about the dogs, but ultimately it's...
So he's an expert in dog training, in police dogs, and you can see that he's got a lot of experience. Let me see if I can just find some of these. I remember the video that I showed of, he's got videos of dogs attacking suspects. So I suggest that you go check out his channel before he comes on tomorrow so that you can see what I'm talking about here. Because I don't have it at the ready. But he's got a lot of videos of actual takedowns of suspects in pursuit. And he's going to show some tomorrow, and they're crazy. But you can see when he's even just training dogs, he's got that protective shield on his right arm because that's exactly where the dog goes. What say you, my friend? What say you? Trish says no jury seeing that arm is going to think it's from a car accident. I know. Beautiful Messy Ball says just Google German Shepherd or canine bites. I mean, I rarely get speechless, but in this case, I'm speechless when somebody comes at me and says, "There's no way, you're an idiot. This is not a dog attack." Perry says a quick search through online images of dog bites will bring up innumerable consistent with John O'Keefe's. Can't and can't. Oh, I see this lady takes to our liver. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about too. Don't you tell me that wasn't an animal attack. Thank you, Team Brittany, for sending me one of Garrett's videos. And that caused me to reach out to him to say, what do you think? Phoebe Beach, imagine John hearing the command to go get him or just see retired canine coming for him. Here's the thing also about attack dogs or kill dogs or attack dogs. They have kill words that are usually in another language so that nobody can mistakenly say the kill word. I don't know if this was a police trained canine, but I'm assuming if its owner was a member of the fugitive task force, probably was. What say you? Yes, Linda, poor man. Let's not forget this is about John O'Keefe. And those poor children who have now suffered so much devastating loss between the loss of both their parents and now the loss of John. Chloe, you've seen him before somewhere? Garrett? Right, Sandra, but was this dog trained like that? We don't know. We don't know because the dog is gone. I'm sure the defense is going to bring in evidence. Kelly Castano, just because they say they are not dog bites does not mean they are not. Thank you, Kelly, for being the voice of reason in all this and telling me that I am not in the Twilight Zone. I need validation from you guys sometimes. I come on here and I'm like, help me understand. Am I crazy for thinking this? OMG. That's all the PL could even muster to say. Lexus comes with teeth, says Charlene. Yes, Dominique, this is the type of video I've seen. They go for the arms to bring you down. Yeah. Deanna says, my dogs are going nuts right now. Bishmack says, Ms. Roberts gear up for Alan Jackson. We don't even know if this is really what Carrie Roberts said. We don't know if she testified in front of the grand jury because that's secret. We don't know if this is just what Proctor wrote in his statement of Carrie Roberts. We don't know. Carrie Roberts was childhood friends with John O'Keefe. They were tight. They went back a long time. So I have questions. Bring your questions tomorrow for Garrett. Check out his channel. We'll be coming at you tomorrow at 1 p.m. He's going to talk about dog training, dog bites, all kinds of things that we want the answers to, just in case we want to know something a little extra. Okay? Wicked Psyched says, there's no evidence yet that Chloe was a police dog, but we also don't know if she was trained or not. Would it strain credulity to think that a sergeant detective of the Boston PD, who was also a member of the fugitive task force, would have a police canine? Would it strain credulity? My father's keeper says, no witness signatures equal no witness statements in my eyes. It's calm again as John was beat up in the house, attacked by Chloe too, and left to die on the lawn. Karen Reed has been framed. Free Karen Reed. Brenda Snyder, those are lacerations. You're correct. Thank you. I'm not crazy, right? I'm not crazy. Mrs. Mark, thank you, Mrs. Mark, for your super sticker. I appreciate all of your support. KL Burke, thank you from Canada for your super chat. Hot take. I think he fell down the stairs. The dog attacked him because he saw him as an intruder and the homeowners just threw him on the lawn. So many things could have happened. So many things other than Karen Reed hitting him with her car, which she's now being tried for murder, not vehicular manslaughter. No. The charges were upgraded to murder. Thank you, Deanna Fazio, for your super sticker. I appreciate all of you. Thank you to my moderators for keeping the chat classy. There is evidence that she has a bite history. 2 bites after January of 2022 that we know of, in which both of those dog bite victims were taken to the ER with puncture and other types of wounds. And I'm sure both of those victims will be called to testify at trial. Who knows if the judge will let that evidence in, but hey, got to give it the old college try, right? Got to give it the old college try. Scott says, I love this show, but that 20-page state lie document has me fuming. Yes, but I thought it was important to bring it to you because I thought it was important for you to see what they are now claiming and how many times the story has changed. Patriot, I wonder if instinctually a German Shepherd would attack like that, even if not trained. Kind of like how some little ones are naturally yippers. Are German Shepherds prone to attacking in that way? That's why we have Garrett, the expert, come in here tomorrow. So please come and watch tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Thank you to my moderators for keeping the chat classy. Everyone, please hit the like button on your way out. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe and like the video. It really helps the video get pushed out and helps other people see it so we don't get shadow banned. And we're going to talk about the dog at length tomorrow, the lacerations, the arm, what German Shepherds are prone to do, what canine police dogs are trained to do, and we will be here for all of it. So again, thank you, Peter. Peter, I'd love to get your take on this. Let me know if you want to come on and talk about the evidence with me, would you? Have Rochella message me because she's the communicator in the family. And if you would like to, I would love for you to come on and talk about homicide investigations in general and how they're handled and how they should be properly handled. So that would be amazing. So I will see everyone tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Just remember, my friends, be cool, be kind, be classy. It's not hard. It's really not that hard. Peace. Till tomorrow. Thanks for watching.